factors in the environment like politics, political environment, cultural, economic, and natural, demographic, technological environment. So let's talk about the things in details. So first we start with the microenvironment. So that means the task environment. So those are the factors that directly impact towards your environment, like customers, suppliers, intermediaries, competitors, and publics. So we'll start with the suppliers. So I said that the primary function of the firm is that you have the raw materials, you get the raw materials, you process them, you produce the product and service, then you take them into the customer. So this is the primary function. So when we're talking about your organization, so you have to, in order to produce the products and services, you should have the raw materials. So the inputs for your organization. So when we're talking about the inputs, just not the raw materials, right? So you get the raw materials, then you get the machines, and you should have the technology, you should have money, capital, everything. So those stuff has to be supplied to your organization. So we call them as the suppliers who supply the inputs for your organization. So when we talk suppliers, so why they are important for your organization, so you know that the quality of your product or service, so that is depend on the quality of the inputs that you use to produce these products and services. So it is essential to have quality inputs in order to produce quality product and services. And also you have to understand, so you have to continuously get these inputs in order to produce the products and services. සාමාන්‍ය production flow එකක් continuously operate වෙන්න ඕනේ. Continuously operate වෙන්න නම් ඔයාට continuously වගේ inputs හම්බ වෙන්න ඕනේ. So this is why the suppliers are important for an organization. And also when we're talking about the suppliers, there are certain type of suppliers that who supplies very rare and limited resources, right? So then their bargaining power is really high. මොකද තමන් ගාව තියෙන රිසෝස් එක ලිමිටඩ් ස්කාසිටි එකක් තියෙන වැලියබල් රිසෝස් එකක් නම් එයාගේ bargaining power එක හැමතිස්සෙම වැඩි වෙනවා. For an example, if you just look at the top richest people, so apart from the technology, so if you look at most of the top 10 people, now they deal with the technology, like owner of the Facebook or the Google and the Microsoft and owners. So they are on the top list, and also the Amazon is there. So then apart from them, right? So if you look at people like Mukesh Ambani and Adani, right? So Lakshmi Mittal, so these people that they deal with some of the natural resources which are very limited than scam. So then what will happen? So their bargaining power is really high because that they have very specific input that you cannot find from anywhere else. On the other hand, you think that the Kharkins Food City, that they sell fruits and vegetables. From where they get this stuff? They get this supplies from the surrounding farmers. So how about the farmers' bargaining power as a supplier? So when it comes to the farmers, that their bargaining power is very low because that they supply the vegetable and fruits. Then if one particular farmer stops supply, then you can go for the another farmer. So there are many farmers who supply the same type of fruits and vegetables to the market. So their bargaining power is very low. So this is what you have to understand when it comes to the suppliers. So when I was talking about this Ford curve case, I think that I must have discussed with you when I was teaching you the management, right? So when we're talking about the Ford concept, the Ford's case study, right? So he left his first organization because they asked he to step down, he to leave the organization. He started his own business, which is known as the Ford. So in the Ford that he started his own supplier company too, right? So then again, he had a kind of agreement with the Flannery brothers in order to get the vanadium steel. So while the other automobile producers at that time were using a kind of a normal alloy, that they had used vanadium steel, which was very strong as well as very light. So that became a kind of identical quality quality element in model N and T for Ford's model N and T, right? So this is what why you have to understand the importance of the suppliers, right? And then right after suppliers, we have the market intermediaries. As I said you before, once you produce the products and services, it doesn't, you do not, cannot make a profit unless you take that product to the customers. So it is important to take your product to the customers. It's really nice if you can take directly your product to the customers, but it is not always possible. ඔයාගේ කස්ටමර්ගේ අතර කට්ටිය වැඩි වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ, so you have to pay them, so your profit margin deteriorate, I mean reduce, right? Therefore it's really nice if you can directly take your products to the customers, but still it's not possible, because when your customers are when you have to deal with large number of customers, you cannot go to one by one and sell them the products, right? So it's difficult because you don't have the enough capacity, you don't have the enough experience, you don't have enough information where the customers are there, and also you don't have enough money, you don't have enough infrastructures like delivery vehicles or delivery vehicles, and all those stuff are there. Therefore, it is difficult for you to do it solely, do by yourself. Right? Therefore, you have to use some intermediaries. That means so the people who will be working in between you and a customer in order to take your product to the customers. So when you're talking about the intermediaries, there may be many forms like resellers, wholesalers, brokers, agents. There might be large number of, there may be many types of intermediaries who involve to take your product from you to the customers. What you always need to understand is that it's really good that if you don't have many intermediaries, because when the number of intermediaries increase, then the number of profit that you get, it decrease. That's the issue. So when we're talking about the Sri Lankan agricultural market, this is a kind of an unsolved eternal issue, because the farmers that they produce lots of products and services, but it is difficult for them to, when it comes to the farmers, that they put a kind of a huge effort and they grow their vegetables and fruits, but when it comes to the intermediaries, that they are the people who get the most of the benefits, made so most of the profits. So the farmers sell the product for the very little prices, and then on the other hand, the consumers, that they get the product for large prices. In order to get the product, that they have to pay large amount of money, right? So the considerability amount, the profit that is grabbed by the intermediaries is little or huge high. So this is a kind of a corruption that always happen in Sri Lankan agricultural marketing, and when it comes to the researchers and the policymakers, that they have been trying to give a solution for these issues along with the government, but they were not still success. Right. So when we're talking about the marketing intermediaries, that you cannot forget about the retailers. Right. So when we're talking about the retailers, you know that when it comes to Sri Lanka, that we have large number of retailers like Heels, ඊළඟට Cargill's එක, ඊට පස්සේ Apico, SoftLogic like a Glowmark, then the Spa. There are many retail channels, big retail channels, large scale retail channels, as well as we have some medium, small, and medium scale retail channels too. So when it comes to retail channels, so that they have kind of a huge bargaining power. So if you just think about some of the small and medium enterprises, like the people who produce condiments, spices, biscuits, පොඩි පොඩි ඒවා කරන පොඩි පොඩි බිස්නස් කට්ටියට මේ තැන් හැරෙන්න විකුණ ගන්න වෙන තැනක් නැහැ. So that they don't have a space, right? So then that they can control these small and medium enterprises in a kind of a massive manner. Sometimes that they can destroy the entire future of businesses future. Suppose you just think when it comes to the spices, that there might be a kind of a small enterprise that who produce spices, that they don't have any other space unless that they don't have space in these kind of retail channels. So instead of taking these spices, if Cargill's and the Kiehl's and the other retail channels started to produce their own spices, so what will happen? Kiehl's Cargill's අනිත් කට්ටිය තමන්ගේ own brand එකකින් Cargill's කියලා spices මිරිස් කුඩු ඒවා මහතුන හදනවා. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? මේ හදන කට්ටියට තමන්ගේ විකුණ ගන්න තැනක් නැති කරොත් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ business එකම නැති කරන්න පුළුවන්. So this is the criticism against the distributional or the retail channels, because that they have a huge monopoly to control the markets. This criticism against the global ventures are really huge. So if you just look at retailers like Tesco, Walmart, Asda. So their bargaining power is really high. So this criticism is always against the Walmart. So whenever a kind of a small and medium enterprise come to the Walmart, that they have to go under the Walmart brand name, right? If not that, they don't have a future. So that's something you have to understand, market intermediaries, right? And then we have the competitors. So they also can directly impact towards your business. දැන් තේරෙනවා ඇති ඉස්සෙල්ලා කතා කරපුවා කොහොමද directly impact කරන්නවද business එකට කියලා. You said the suppliers. If the suppliers are not there, so you cannot produce your product. So that is directly impact towards your business. And also on the other hand, you have the distributors. If you don't have them, that you cannot take your product to the customer. So that directly impact towards your business. And then you have the competitors, how they can directly impact towards your business. So when we talk about the competitors, Lama, so they are the people who sell the same products or service like you, your organization. They product something similar to you. So when it comes to the customers, that they have few options. That means your competitors and you. So then suppose your competitor that they suddenly drop their prices. What will happen? If there is no significant difference between you and your competitor's product, then definitely your customers will shift from your product to other products. So this is what that going to be happen when it comes to the Starlight. අරගොල්ලෝ අරගෙන යන්නේ ඒකත් එක්ක වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න කියලා අපි කියන්නේ competitor move වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So when we talk the competitors, suppose that one second. Sorry, I had to stop for a while, right? So when we're talking about the competitors, right? So that then අපි කතා කරේ competitor කෙනෙක් එකපාරට price එක අඩු කරොත්, so then definitely your customers might move from you to your competitors. And also on the other hand, suddenly if the competitors have found a new technology and that they have improved their products, so then the quality is improving. So then there is also a chance that your customer might move from you to your competitors, right? So the competitors, if something happens with the competitors, so that will directly impact towards your business. So they are part of microenvironment. So this is what you have to understand. And also you have the customers, even though we are talking about the customers at last, so they are the most crucial and the most important part in microenvironment, the element in the microenvironment. Because if you don't have the customers, you don't have a business. So we normally say that the customer is the king and the epicenter of the business is the customer. So when we're talking about the customers, right? So you get profit if only customers buy your product, right? So when the if that customers buying behavior change, if there is a kind of a change in the customers buying trends, then that will definitely directly impact towards your business, right? So when we're talking about the customers, we said that the customers, in a sense, that they are the people who buy your product. It's not essentially need them to use your products, right? So when we're talking about the customers, we talk about five types of markets that purchase the company's goods and services. There might be five type of customers that you see in the market. So these are the five types. So first we'll talk about the consumers. So the consumers, in a sense, that they buy their products for their own usage, household එකකට. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදියට ගත්තොත් consumer කෙනෙක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ඔයාගේ දැන් අපි හිතුවොත් අපේ ගෙදරට අපි ගන්නවා බඩුවක් මට විතරක්ම නෙවෙයි ගෙදර කට්ටියටත් use කරන්න. So then it's consumer markets, right? So you buy your product for your own usage or your household usage. So that is known as consumer market. And also you might buying a particular product in order to produce another product or service. For an example, when you are buying a laptop for yourself or your household, so that is a consumer market. So when you are buying a laptop for the university, so you use that is in order to provide the lectures for the students or another service. So that is business market. So when it comes to the business market, so you normally buy in large quantities. So for your house, you're buying one laptop, but for the businesses, for the university, you buy more than 10 laptops at once. So that's business market, right? So the consumer can be there, business might be there. So your customer might be a consumer, your customer might be another business. What's the reseller market? So in business market, you buy it and you produce something and sell it. But in resale market, what happens? You buy the laptop, you keep a margin, and you then sell again. So that is known as a reseller market. Retail market, so whatever you see like the soft logic and the, I mean, Cargills, then Keels. So they are resellers. Tesco, the Walmart. So they are resellers. They buy your product, they keep the margin and then resell it, right? So they don't do another business. They don't produce something else. And also customer might be a government market. So when we're talking about sometimes some of the products that has to be bought by the government, right? The crude oil ගත්තාම වෙන business කරන්න බෑ. Government එකෙන් තමයි වෙන රටකින් purchase කරන්න කෙලින්ම. Right? So that's government market. So your customer is government. So then there are many regulations that you have to go through. So you have to go for the tenders and you have to have a kind of an open documents, right? So you have to publicize them, right? So that is there. So those are known as government market. Then right after the government market, so you have some international markets. So that means so your customer is in another country, in another territory. So it's an international market. So you have to trade them, you have to export them. So there are many things that has to be happen. So those are international markets. So this is what we call as type of customers. So there you can see five type of customers that can impact towards your business, right? Then thereafter, we are going to talk about the macro environment. So those are the factors that indirectly impact towards your organization. So the factors that indirectly impact towards your organization. Right? So you have to understand both the macro and micro factors are a little difficult to control. They are uncontrollable environment. And also this difficulty is little high for the macro environment. So when we're talking macro environments, let's talk about the demographic factors first, right? So when we're talking about the demographic factors, so that means factors that deals with the population. Whatever the changes that happens in the population. So if your population is aging, so if you have if you have increasing adult population, so that's kind of a trend. And if you have a kind of population that will deal with the small family structures, that if there is a tendency to not to marry and living together, so that's a tendency. So it's the family structure. And also if your population moving from rural areas to the urban area, so that's a geographical shift. So that's also a kind of a demographic change, right? And also when it comes to the literacy rate, so if the literacy rate is increasing, so if the exposure to the information is increasing, if the digital literacy is increasing, so that's also a demographic trend, right? So if you if the demand for the white collar job is increasing, if the demand for the farming job is decreasing, so that's also a kind of a demographic trend. And also the ethnic groups, if there is a kind of an increase in particular ethnic group. So for an example, if you just think about most of the European countries now, that they have an increasing Asian population. So they have to deal with the demand of the Asian people. Right. So these are known as the key demographic trends. So why it's important for the marketeers to understand these demographic trends? Because that they impact towards your your micro environment and your business too. හරිද මේවට ඔයාගේ micro factors වලට impact කරන්න පුළුවන්. And then they can impact towards your business too. හිතුනන් aging structure එක වැඩි වෙනකොට. So you know that the elderly community is increasing. Then you have to understand. So there is the demand for specific products that is demanded by these elderly people. So you have to get ready with these products. So sometimes that they might ask for some elderly home, the paid elderly home with super luxury stuff, because then they have disposable income in their hand. They are now, most of their kids are outside, they have migrated, that they are in different countries, so they don't have anyone, but they have money, right? So then you have to think about these stuff. And also when the aging structure is changing, when the elderly community is increasing, that there may be demand for the senior citizen account, right? That they're asking for a little bit increased interest rate. And so these are the stuff that you have to understand. And also when the family structure is changing, so when you have small families, so what happens? So the people are moving towards the apartments, small houses, because it's easy for them to um, maintain. And on the other hand, so when the people are moving from the rural to the urban, then again there is a huge demand for the apartment that's close to the urban areas, which are close to the most of the official locations, as well as the that creates more employment opportunities, and also where they are very close to the urban schools, best schools in the cities. And also you have to understand the literacy rate, education. So when the literacy rate is increasing, now you know that the consumers are aware about the products and all the details. So they're looking for more information. So you have to understand that. And ethnicity. So as I said you before, when the Asian community is increasing, then they have to think about their food requirements. So they are looking for some types of foods. And when the Muslim community is increasing, that you know that you have to provide them halal foods, halal certified foods should be there. There is a huge demand for them. So these are the key demographic trends that you should understand. And also the economic factors, so that how the economic factors might impact towards your organization. Changes in income. So when there is a kind of economic crisis, what will happen? So then there will be a kind of a changes in income, because the expenditure, the inflation is increasing, then the people have no disposable income, that they don't have more money to spend on their luxury items, so that they have to limit their consumption. And also, on the other hand, when there is a kind of expansion in the economy, boom in the economy, so what will happen, right? Changes in the income. And also the economic development, as I said before, the crisis and the booms, right? And also the consumer spending pattern. So, you know, we are a kind of a very consumptive nation, right? So we spend a lot. But if you just think about countries like Norway and some of the European countries, that they say, Japan, that they do not spend much, right? So then again, although their income is high, but still, if they do not spend a lot, then it's also becoming an issue. And also, the nation should not be highly consumptive like South Korea, right? So if you look at them, that they says that they are very consumptive and that they go on a kind of a credit basis consumption too, and changes in the consumer spending pattern. So if you look at now these days, we can see that the most of the people that they investing on the automobile, so that's increasing. Then you have to understand the changes in the consumer spending pattern. So if you look at the last decade, that we have seen most of the people that they have invested in the real estate market, but now that they are investing in the vehicles, right? So these are changes patterns that we see. And then when we're talking about the natural environment, right? So when we're talking about the natural resources, that there is a scarcity in the natural resources, limitation. The resources are limited. So when you are extracting the resources, you know that everything depends on the energy. So and the resources, when you are extracting the resources, the cost that you bear to extract the resources, that increased with the scarcity, right? So initially we have taken the resources on the surface and the cost of the extraction was little less. But when you are now going in deep, what will happen? So now your extraction cost is increasing. Therefore, the price of the goods and services products might be increasing. So that has to be taken into the account, right? And also the more government interventions are there. So there, because there is a limitation in the resources, the more government interventions, the legal and all these stuff are there, right? So the shortage and the increased cost of the energy, right? So, and also the pollution. Now the people think about the pollution too, because we know that the climate change and the global warming is increasing. Therefore, that the people now focus about the natural environment. So that also impact towards your business, because you have to aware now, so you have to reduce the pollution. And also, now that you have to increase some of the prices of your product, because your energy cost is high, so your raw materials are very rare and you have to bear a huge cost, so that increase your production costs. So you have to think about all these the elements in the natural environment too. And then we are going to talk about the technological, political, and cultural factors. So when we're talking about the technology, so you know that now we have artificial intelligence. So there is a kind of a high research and development budgets that um, you have to allocate for your organization, because now you can see that when it comes to the product's life cycle is very shortened. Product एक life cycle एक हर short. Other in a product एक header tower feature making replaced, And so you can see that if you look at the Apple mobile phone range, that the time that they have taken to replace from one model to another model, so that has been reduced, the time gap. Right. So the 16 came in a such a fast mode, right? So this is what you have to understand. So therefore, it's essential for the organization to allocate a kind of a huge budget on research and development in order to improve their products and services. And also, when it comes to the technology, you have to understand the information that you have in your hand. So you have a kind of a contractual agreement between you and the customer in order to protect their information. So the increased regulation, so the patent, copyright, and all these stuff are there, right? And also you have to think about the improvement, some of the minor improvement in your products and services technology, right? So this is what you have to understand. And then when it comes to the political environment, so how that might impact towards your business. So you might have seen that recently, right after the government has taken the, importation, vehicle imports ban effect. So what was happened now that the number of the demand for the vehicle is increasing in a kind of a drastic manner, specifically for the EV vehicles, right? So that has impact towards the business. So when you're talking about the political environments, the changing enforcement, so when you are taking some of the import bans out, right? So when you are opening some trade agreements, right? So when you reduce some taxes, when you increase some taxes, that impact towards your business. It says that initially the 44% was there, and now the US has been reduced that up to 20%, but now still it says that might impact towards the Sri Lankan government sector, because our biggest market is there in US, right? So you have to understand how the political factors might impact towards your business, and that is through your suppliers actually, right? They do not directly impact you, but through your suppliers and your distributors, right? So also you have to think about the ethical concerns. So when we're talking about the political environment, so they say that whatever the ethical concerns, so the child labor, and also when you use some exploitations, the gender exploitations, and all these stuff are some concerns, right? And then when we're talking about the political environment, you have to think about the crises, I mean, corruptions too. හරිද සාමාන්‍යයෙන් corruption එක ඊළඟට ඒ කියන්නේ අර එකකදී තියෙනවා that there is an kind of a good example, right? So when we're talking about most of the apparel garment in Sri Lanka, that they shifted to countries like Haiti, but again that they have taken them away because there are many local thugs who have asked for the ransom and bribe. So you had to bribe for these local thugs in order to run your business. And also there is a particular organization, a tire company, which they have started their business in Mexico. Then there were a kind of a local thugs who have kidnapped the CEO's daughter to get a kind of a huge ransom. So these are like local corruption, local local violences, and those also impact towards your business, right? So that's also important to understand. And when we're talking about the cultural environment, so when you deal with, specifically when you deal with different countries in international marketing, you have to think about the cultural differences too, because that there are people who speak different languages, eat different foods, their culture is different. So you have to think about this stuff. So we have talked about many examples when it comes to the management. If you can remember, we said that අපි culture ගැන කතා කරනකොට මතක ඇති අපි කතා කරේ LG Electronics කියලා South Korean brand එකක් ගැන කතා කරා. We talk about that kimchi food and the refrigerator that they have made, and we said that small adaptation, this small adaptation gave them a chance to win most of their South Korean, win the South Korean market. And this is something you have to understand. So the cultural differences, so you have to understand the cultural differences, and you have to change your product according to this stuff, because when it comes to the marketing, we talk about 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. Product features, price, place, and promotion. Specifically, the product features and the promotion has to be changed according to the cultural environment. So I said that some people perceive some advertisement in different manner, right? So when it comes to the white කියන color එක සමහර අයට morning color එකක්, so they don't like to have that some of the products in that particular color. And also when it comes to the vehicle colors in Sri Lanka, you know that there is a huge demand for the white, black, and the ash color, but not for the others mainly, right? So this cultural difference should be considered when it comes to the businesses, right? And then when we're talking about the marketing environment, so environment management as a marketer, it is important for you to understand what happens in the environment, because this is the place where you identify the opportunities and threats. ඔයාට opportunities and threats හම්බ වෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ market එකේදී. So if you find some opportunities, then you have to utilize them. So if you have a kind of a threat, so you have to understand the way that I can ignore, or the way I can mitigate this threat or the risk. Okay? So that is important to understand. And also we have few questions in hand, right? So that I'm asking you to state the 4 components in microenvironment, and I'm asking you to explain how do the key demographic trends impact towards automobile market. and I'm asking you to describe that using a real world example. And also you have to state the four components in macro environment, and you have to explain how do those macro environment impact towards the automobile markets, right? So these are the review questions. So I'll give you a time in order to answer this and upload that. I'll provide a link to. So for the first time that I have given you a link that you have to upload it by 10:30, right? So those are very small stuff that just answer within one single Word document and upload it, right? So now all the presentations are there in your LMS. So with that, we have come to I'll give you a kind of a separate time for this task. No worries about this right now. Okay. So I'm going to start my next chapter. So let's go to the next one. So until I start it, just give me a few minutes.
Excuse me, madam.
Yes.
Is this also submit through LMS? Chapter
Yeah.
2 question?
Chapter 2 is I'll give you another link and I'll give you some time. I mean, not right now. Okay.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I'll give you 30 minutes to prepare the answers, but not right now, right? I'll give you 30 minutes and then I'll put the link and you can then upload. Okay.
Okay, madam.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the strategic planning and the marketing process. This is how it goes, Amal. So for this session, I'll be having 4 chapters. This Saturday, I'll be covering 4 chapters, and on next Saturday, I'll be covering another 4 chapters. So altogether, we have to cover 8 chapters. Today, we will be covering basically whatever the necessary, fundamental, necessary stuff like in marketing, like the introduction as well as the environment and the strategic planning process, as well as the B2B customers and B2C market. So this is what we are going to cover today. And next week, we will be covering our 4 marketing pieces. That means the product, price, place, and promotion, right? So when we're talking about the strategic planning process, this is a bit lengthy and a kind of a complex chapter. So here you will be studying most of the corners, the corner pieces in marketing. When we're talking about the strategic planning, right? So you might have heard, not might have heard, you have learned in management, if you can remember. So you have learned 4 managerial functions, right? So that is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Well, when we're talking about the managerial functions, so we said that there are 4 managerial functions. So that is planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. So the management වලදී අපි කිව්වා මේ functions 4 ඕනම manager කෙනෙක්ට, irrespective to who you are, whether you are a marketing manager, whether you are a finance manager, whether you are a human resource manager, whoever you are, that you have to So when we're talking about this planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, so these are the 4 managerial functions. So irrespective to who you are, so you might be a marketing manager, you might be a manufacturing manager, you might be operational manager, whoever you are, that you have implement this function that is in your context, right? So if you are a marketing manager, you have to have a marketing plan. You have to lead the marketing team. You have to organize the resources for the marketing team. You have to control your marketing campaign. So this is how it happens. Right? And also, when it comes to the managerial level, so there are top managers, middle managers, as well as the bottom line managers. So whoever you are, that you have to implement these functions in your scale. So the top managers make the plans for the entire organization. They allocate the resources for the entire organization. They lead the entire organization. They control the process of entire organization. But the level managers, that they do planning, leading, organizing, controlling in their level. So this is what you have to understand. So in here, basically, we are talking about the planning function as a manager. So this is what we try to do. So the strategic planning and the marketing process. So when we talking about the strategic planning, here we are discussing about the 4 steps in the planning process. He says that the strategic planning process, so that involves a kind of a developing company strategy for their long-term survival and the growth. So in order to survive in the business environment, so in long term, you have to survive your business. This has to be sustainable. So you have to grow your business. So what are the strategies that you can use to develop your organization as well as grow your business? Right? So that's what we call as the strategic planning process. So it has 4 steps in order. Right, so the first one is that you have to define your mission. So the second one is that you have to set your company objectives. So the third one is that you have to design your business portfolio. And the fourth one is that you have to plan your functional strategies. So let's start with the first step. So the first step is that you have to define your mission. So you know that in an organization, we have 3 things in a kind of an hierarchy. So the objectives comes in an order. So we said that on top you have the vision, and then you have the mission, and then you have your objectives in your organization. So the vision, in a sense, it's a kind of dream for your organization. So once you close your eyes that you have a particular dream, it doesn't mean that whether you will be able to achieve your dreams or not. You don't know that. It's a kind of a dream. It has no definition. So it's something very large, very qualitative, and very descriptive. So you don't know the scope and the boundaries of the vision. Right? Vision කියන එක realistic නැති එක. So then we have something called missions. That is something realistic, but it will take little time to achieve your mission. Sometimes that might be like 5 to 10 years. Right? So it's a kind of a long-term objective of your organization. So your organization is there to achieve your mission. So that is the reason for the existence, reason for the purpose of your organization is your mission. So when it comes to a mission, so that start with whatever the things that you're gonna do right after certain period of a time. So that's what we call as mission. Then there are vision, you have the objectives. So those, like, there are a lot of objectives for an organization in order to achieve your mission. So the objectives can be long term, intermediate term, as well as short term, right? So anyway, the objectives that they always assure that you will be achieving your mission within certain period of a time. So once you go, I mean, right soon after we finish this particular lecture, please go to some of the website and look at the missions of some of the known organizations like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Hemas, as well as Browns and Barbara University and some of the universities like Harvard, MIT, and also look at some of the multinational companies like Nestle, right? So then look at their mission and try to identify, they try to figure out their characteristics of the mission statement. So when we talk about the mission, right, so the first thing is that it is market oriented. It says the type of customers that you deal with and the type of product that you deliver to them. And also it says what makes it different from you to your competitors. And also the mission is something realistic. It's long term, but it's realistic. But and also it's specific. It says that how it's a kind of a long term objective and it will take time, the way that we're going to deal with, right? And also it discuss about the environment that we deal with. For an example, if you look at the Bombay University mission, so it says that we are in the education environment, we deal with the students, so this is our target, right? And also it says that how our university is different from the other universities, so their competencies. And also when you are having a mission, it motivates your employees, because your employees now know that what is your ultimate target, why the reason for the existence of your organization. So it always motivates your employees too. So this is what you have to understand. So when it comes to the mission statement, so there are many characteristics that you need to figure out, and then please go through those missions that is available on their websites and look at them and try to identify these characteristics. And then when we talk about the right after the mission, so you have the objective, right? So you have to define your mission, and then you have to define or set your objectives. So as I said you the objectives, so you you break down your mission into small particles, and those are your objectives. So you might be having thousands of objectives in your organization that can be categorized into long-term, intermediate, and the short-term objectives. So when it comes to objectives, you always say that they have to be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bounds. We know that there is a kind of a slight difference between the objectives and the goals, but we are not going to consider about that particular difference, and we will be taking the goals and objectives together. So we say those objectives should be SMART, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. For an example, if you just think about as a marketing manager, I'm asking you to increase your sales. Then it's not something smart, because increasing sales in a sense, I don't tell that whatever the resources that you get, the time that you have, and I don't say about the quantity that how it should be increased. For an example, if you have sold 100 units yesterday, so if you're gonna sell 102 tomorrow, so that also increase, right? So it's also increment, right? So it has to be smart, it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, realistic, and time bound. So rather than saying increasing sales, I would say like, okay, you have to increase sales by 5% within next 6 months, right? So with this particular stock, right? So this is something smart, right? So we say that, okay, you have to increase by this thing. So it's specifically says what you have to do. It can be measured, right? So I said that it's 5%. So you know what you have sold last month, and you have to increase that by 5%. And so this is what you have to cover within next 6 months. So it's also measurable and it's achievable. So I didn't ask you to increase the sales by 100%, because it's not something achievable, or it's not something realistic. And also I said that you have this much of resources. I know that last time you have covered 50, you have sold 100% unit with 2 staff members, but I know now you cannot increase the sales by 5% with 2 staff members. So I had increased your number of sales staff into 3 members, right? So this is realistic, this is achievable. And also the time bound is there. So I ask you to obtain this task by 6 months, right? So that's smart, right? So this is how you have to set your objectives. So then the third step is designing your business portfolio. So what does it mean by the business portfolio? So when it comes to a business that they sell different type of products, right? So they have range of products, even a kind of a furniture shop, right? So if you go to a furniture shop, right, so that they have the tables, drawers, as well as that they have what dressing tables, that they have some chairs, beds. So there are certain type range of products that they have, right? So if you go to the Pizza Hut, even that they have the range of food items. So what are they have? They have pizza, they have some combo, they have rice, mac, they have some like milks, right? So these are the product ranges that they have. So when we're talking about some of the companies that they have kind of a big range, right? So if you just look at a company like Unilever, that they have they operate in 4 pillars. That they have food and beverage pillar, and they have personal care, household, as well as the Unilever theory. Right. So when we're talking about these pillars under these food and beverages, that they have large number of products, right? So they have Astra, they have Flora, so everything under, I think Marmite even, right? So they have many products under food and beverage. They have many shampoo brands, they have many stuff under the personal care. Under the household, that they have many washing powder, many detergent soap, so there are many stuff. Right. So you have to understand so that when it comes to the organization, that they have now products that in their product range. So the best that is what we call as the business portfolio, number of strategic business units that you have in your organization. So normally, rather than stick to a one business, it's always recommended to diversify your business. For an example, Nama, just think that you have invest only in tourism sector. So suppose that in the COVID time that you have invested, you had business only deal with the tourism. So what would have happened at that time? So at that time, the demand for the tourism has been drastically decreased. Then what happened? So if you have had the business only deal with the tourism, your entire cash flow would have collapsed. But apart from the tourism sector, if you have had invested in the pharmaceutical, so what would have happened? So when the gain from the tourism has been decreased, that you would have increased the gain from the pharmaceutical sector. So this is how you mitigate the risk, right? So this is how you reduce the risk. You can invest in different business sectors. So when one business sector not perform well, then you can compensate with the other business unit. So this is something you have to understand. So this is the advantage of the diversification, right? මේකට කියනවා diversify කරනවා අපි business ගොඩක් තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා. For an example, if you just think about the John Keels, that they are in different sectors. They have the retail market, they have the banks, now they have the Union Assurance with them, you have the NTB with them, and they have hotel channels, right? So Jetwing channel, Jetwing is their hotel. Apart from the Jetwing, that they have many hotel channels, right? They have the pharmaceuticals, and they have no automobiles that they have franchised with the BYD, right? So they diversify their business into that level. When one particular business not perform well, that the other can compensate it, right? So that's known as the business portfolio. So the number of strategic business units that you have in your organization. So when it comes to the diversification, that there are benefits as well as the disbenefits, right? So the benefit is that, of course, that you can mitigate the risk. So the disbenefit is that control. Sometimes when you're diversifying your control, the control might go out of the management, the top management. So this is what happened to the EAP group. This is what happened to the Selinco. Right? So you have to understand. So when we talk about the business portfolio, so the next step is that you have to design your business portfolio. So when you are having number of strategic business unit, so you have to understand where I should make priorities, where I should invest, where I should not invest. If I invest, where I should invest more and where I should invest less. So this has to be decided. So this is what we call as the designing business portfolio. So in order to understand where you're going to invest and not, so you have to do a kind of a business analysis. So first what you have to do, so you have to analyze your current strategic business unit. So you have to analyze your business portfolio and current strategic business unit. And then you have to decide where you should invest and where you should not invest. So if you invest, you have to decide where you should invest more and where you should invest less. Right? So if you decided that you are going to invest in a particular business, then you have to decide again how I'm going to grow my business. So this is what we are going to study now in designing the business portfolio. So just before we design the business portfolio, so this is the snapshot of the strategic planning process. So if you can remember, when we're talking about the managerial function, so we said that the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So if you can see here, we have said that planning is there, controlling is there. Apart from that, you have the implementing. What I have done is that I have combined the organizing and leading into one, and then I'm saying it's as implementing. So when we talk about the marketing planning process, the strategic planning process, so you have to plan, you have to implement, and you have to control. So when it comes to the planning, so you have to do the planning in different level. So the general marketing director at the corporate level, so he make the marketing plan for the entire organization. So the division planning are there, business planning are there, product plans are there. So when it comes to a particular organizations like Unilever, so you have the divisions like food and beverage, personal care. So there will be a manager who plan for the food and beverage as a whole pillar. And for that category, if in food and beverages, that you might have the margarine and then the soft drinks in a kind of a particular category. And for that, you have a different product like Flora, Astra, so that the product planning, right? So this is how it goes on. Then you have the implementing and you have the controlling. So the control implementing, in a sense, you are allocating the resources and then you are leading them, you are motivating them, right? So how you're going to achieve the goals, organizational goals. And the controlling, in a sense, you measure the results and you check whether you are performing well, and if not, you have to take the corrective action. So everything that is related to the marketing. So everything is similar what we have studied in the management, but the difference is that you are contextualizing it to the marketing context. Okay, so that's about the strategic planning process. Now we are going to design our portfolio. So just before that, we have to analyze our strategic business unit. So when we analyze our strategic business unit, that we can use few frameworks. So there are certain framework that we can use to analyze our SBUs. So in here, in this particular chapter, we will be discussing about two frameworks that we can use to analyze the strategic business unit. So the first one is the BCG matrix, which is known as the Boston Consulting Group approach, and the other one is the GE matrix. So the Boston Consulting Group has been given by Boston Consultants. So that means, when it comes to the most academic institution in US that is located in Boston, including Harvard and MIT. Right? So there are many consultancy groups, the business groups that's around in area. So the Boston Consulting Group is one such group that develop these kind of consulting and strategic ideas. Right? So that they have given this particular matrix, which is known as the BCG matrix. So in here, in order to analyze the SBUs, that they use two determinants. So that they use two criteria in order to spot your businesses, in order to analyze or categorize your business, to identify where you should invest and where you should not invest. So those determinants are the relative market share and the market growth rate. So you have the relative market share as well as you have the market growth rate. What does it mean by the market share? So the market share, in a sense, that that when it comes to the milk powder, so there are people who consume milk powder. So that is the total market for milk powder. So from that market share, so what is the market, who are the people who drinks Highland? So that is the market share for the Highland. So the relative market share, in a sense, your market share with respect to the market leader. Market leader to සාපේක්ෂව ඔයාගේ market share එකට තමයි අපි කියන්නේ relative market share කියලා. Right? And the next thing is the market growth rate. So, you know, when we're talking about business, we have to understand whether it's a growing or declining business, right? So, if you just look at the milk powder market, so you have to understand whether the market, whether the demand for the milk powder is increasing or decreasing. So, how can you get it? So, you can get the data from the Department of Statistics. You can get an idea about the milk powder consumption in Sri Lanka. So you can check the milk powder consumption in last year, and you can check the milk powder consumption in this year, and you can check the trend whether it's increasing or decreasing. So this is what we call as the marketing growth rate. So whether the market is growing or not. Right. So when considering the relative market share and the market growth rate, so considering whether the relative market share is high or low, and whether the market growth rate is high or low, then you can segregate, you can divide the market, so not the market, your SBU, strategic business units, into 4 categories, which is known as stars, question marks, cash cows, and the dogs. So let's talk about the first block, which is known as the stars. Here you can see the relative market share is high, as well as the market growth rate is also high. So that means this is a kind of a promising business. Your market share is also increasing, and the market growth rate is also increasing. Suppose that the milk powder market is increasing, and also the consumption is increasing, and also your demand for your product is also increasing. So it's a star business. So if you look at the Maliban, so the Maliban conglomerate, so if you just look at the Maliban's SBU, so that they have large number of businesses in their hand. It's not just the biscuit, and it's not just the milk powder, right? So just if you just think about the Maliban milk powder, it's a kind of a star because its market growth rate is also increasing, and there is a positive market growth rate, and also the relative market share is also positive, it's high. So we call it as a star. So investing in Maliban milk powder is promising because you know that there is a high growth and high share, so the profit potential that they will make profit in future. So you need heavy investment to grow these kind of business. So we call them as the stars, right? So the stars ගත්තට පස්සේ once you go down, you have something, not go down, so you go parallelly. So you have something called question marks. So you have to understand here what happens. So your relative market share is low, but this is a kind of a promising industry because the market growth rate is high, right? So you know the industry is growing, but your market share is decreasing. So you have to understand there is something wrong with your business because business is growing, but your business is decreasing. So there is a question. So this is why I call that as the question mark. So if you look at the Highland milk powder, so you know that the market share for the Highland milk powder it has been decreased. Assume that now it must be increasing, right? Decreasing, but the milk consumption market market growth rate is increasing. So you have to understand the issue. So probably the Highland that they don't have a kind of a proper distributional channel, that their production efficiency is low, so therefore they do not have production to meet the customer demand. So this is the issue, right? So you have to understand, so there is a high growth in the market, but you have a low market share. You have potential to make this into a star. You can create Highland milk powder a star. If you produce more and more Highland milk powder, if you distribute them properly, then there are people who are ready to buy it. So you can make this question mark to a star. So you can build it into a star. Sometimes there might be a situation where you cannot compete with the competitors. ඒ කියන්නේ soft drinks වලට තියෙන demand එක වැඩි වෙගෙන යනවා. හැබැයි snack එකට තියෙන demand එක අඩු වෙගෙන යනවා. මොකද ඔයාට compete කරන්න බෑ ලොකු competitive market එකක් එක්ක. සමහර වෙලාවට මේකේ මේකේ unfortunate වෙන්නේ මේ වගේ වෙලාවල් වලදී සමහර වෙලාවට ඔයා මේ ඔයාගේ product එක phase out කරන්න. Either you have to wind up this particular product if you not in a position to compete with them. So you have two options. So you should check whether you can make into a star, whether you can make this product into a star, or whether you have no chance in the market. So what you have to do, so you need cash to hold the market share. Sometimes you have to hold it until that it gives you a favorable result. Also, this is what we call as the question mark. Right? අරකට තරම්ම heavily invest කරන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි invest නොකර ඉන්නෙත් නෑ. මොකද මේකේ promising එකක් තියෙනවා මේ industry එකක් විදිහට. Right? And then we have the cash cows right opposite of the question mark. Right? The cash cow වල මොකද වෙන්නේ? So your relative market share is high, but your market growth rate is low. This is not promising industry. As an industry, this is declining. For an example, now you know we don't use the cassettes anymore, right? So then the data storage devices වලට තියෙන demand එක ටිකක් අඩු වෙගෙන යනවා cloud නම් මනුත් එක්ක, right? So but for your product, so that you have a market share. So that is what we call as a cash cow. So the relative market share is high, market growth rate is low. So the best example is Sunlight Lamai. So when we're talking about the Sunlight, so this is the Unilever's first brand that came into the Sri Lanka. So people have realized and have recognized the Unilever brand through Sunlight. So when you ask for the detergent prices back then, if you look at the history, right? So the people at that time, whenever they were asking for the soap, that they never asked for the soap, that they said Sunlight කෑල්ලක් දෙන්නේ. එහෙම තමයි වෙන සබන් ගත්තත් ගත්තේ. So that is something you have to understand. So when we're talking about the detergent soap, you know that as an industry, so the demand for the detergent soap is now decreasing. Each and everyone now use either washing liquid capsules or the washing powder. Right? I mean, that is also decreasing, but still people look for the people who use the detergent soap that they use Sunlight. Right? So that is what we call as the relative market share of the Sunlight is high, but the detergent soap, as a detergent soap, market growth rate for that particular product is decline. Can we take out this product, wind up this product, phase out this product as it is, I mean, the market growth rate is declining? No, you can't do it because sometimes this particular product is a kind of an identified unique brand element in your organization, and also it produces you cash. So then you cannot remove that particular product from your product portfolio. When we're talking about the products, there are some products that go beyond product name. So there are very few examples. So one is Sunlight, the other one is the Pampers. So if you look at the Pampers, Pampers is the brand, but when you are asking for the diapers, the product is the diaper. But nobody asks for the diaper. People ask for the Pampers. Pampers කියලා ගන්න කඩල් හරි වෙන එකක් හරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්, but they ask for Pampers. They don't call it diapers. So this is something you have to understand. So the place where the product, I mean the brand name go beyond the product name, right? So that's about the cash cows. Cash cows in a sense that your market share is high, market growth rate is low, low growth, high share. So it's a kind of a very established and successful SBU in your organization like Sunlight. So that produces cash. So you have to hold your money because you cannot stop investing. You cannot stop investing in it. You have to keep it up because it produces you cash. Right? So whatever the cash that you produce in your cash, how can be invested in stars as well as the question marks in order to have a promising future. And then we have something called DOG. So that means where you have the relatively low market share and relatively low market growth rate. Market share එකත් අඩුයි, growth rate එකත් අඩුයි. ඒ වගේ ඒවට අපි කියනවා dogs කියලා. So that means you don't have future. right? So low growth rate, low share, low profit, you know that you have to phase it out or you have quit this particular business. So this is a kind of SBU that you should not invest, right? So this is what we call as the BCG matrix. So you have two dimensions like relative market share and market growth rate. So based on these determinants, you can categorize the SBUs into four categories like stars, question marks, cash cows, and the dogs. So that gives you an impression that where you should invest and where you should not invest, right? And apart from the BCG matrix, we have something called GE matrix. This has been given by the McKinsey. So you know that we call this as the GE McKinsey matrix to කියනවා. මේක ඇවිල්ලා GE McKinsey matrix එක කියලා කියන්නේ. So this has been given by the consulting group, which is known as the McKinsey, that they also operate in Sri Lanka even. So it's a kind of a global worldwide consultancy group. So when we talk about the BCG matrix, it says that you have only 4 options, right? But in McKinsey's GE matrix, so you have 9 options. So you have 9 blocks that makes your decision more strategic, right? So when we talk about the GE matrix, here we have 2 dimensions, which is known as 2 determinants, which is known as the business strength and the industry attractiveness. So if you look at the last one, the BCG matrix, we have talked about only the relative market share. But apart from the relative market share, in here, GE matrix, we talk about the business strength. So the business strength is a kind of an index that is derived by large number of what do you call aspects. Business strength එක aspect එකක් විතරයි relative market share කියලා කියන්නේ. So it covers number of other aspects that express the business strength. And also the industry attractiveness. In there that we have talked about just the industry growth rate. But in here, we talk about the industry attractiveness as a whole. So the industry growth rate is also part of the industry attractiveness, but it has many other aspects too, right? So based on the business strength and the industry attractiveness, we categorize the business into 9 blocks. You can plot your SBUs. ඔයාගේ SBU එක මේ කියන තැන් කීප මේ blocks නම් ඕන තැනක අපිට spot කරන්න පුළුවන්. So here I have spotted example this particular business that they have 4 business units like A, B, C, D. So let's talk about them later. So here you have 9 blocks. So therefore we sometimes call this as the 9 blocks matrix too, right? So if you look at this green color area, can you see the combination of the business strength and the industry attractiveness? So here you can see that they have high combination. Here strong and high. So high combination. And here they have high and average combination. High and average combination. On the other hand, also high and average combination. It's not average, okay? It's high and average. Either one component should be strong or high. So this is what I'm saying. So that is the green color area. So that particular area, we call that as a growth strategy, right? We make it to use growth strategy because it's a kind of a very promising area where you have high business strength and high industry attractiveness. So let's go to this yellow color area. So if you look at this yellow color area, you can see the combination. Sometimes there might be the weak that has to be combined with the high. Weak තිබ්බට කමන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි combine වෙන්න high එක. හරිද? And also the weak තිබ්බට කමන්නේ නැහැ. Combine වෙලා තියෙන මේ පැත්තේ high එක. හැබැයි ඊළඟට තව combination එකක් තියන්න පුළුවන්. Average. හැබැයි weak තියන්න පුළුවන්. බැහැ. Average high කියුත් තියන්න අනිත් පැත්තේ green එකට. Average තියන්න පුළුවන්. And high weak තියන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි weak average තියන්න බැහැ. So that's as this yellow color area, so where you have the whole strategy. So that means this business doesn't perform well right now, but there may be a certain situation. If the condition is favorable, there is a chance that the business might perform well. So until that, you have to hold your business. So the strategy is hold. Green color ke grow, yellow color ke hold. Then once you go to this red color area, you can see the combination. So either weak or weak average. So this is the place where the business is not promising. So then you have to see that you can either harvest or put up the business here. So let's have a kind of a summary of the GE matrix. So when you have a complex product portfolio, then it is difficult for you to take the decision. This is why each product will have its own demands and the requirements, right? So therefore, but when it comes to your organization, you know that you have only limited resources in your organization. So as a business manager, what you have to do, you have to look at your organization, and you have to check how your business units grows and how your industry grows in a kind of an optimum rate. And so then you have to invest in the places where you can get the optimum return, right? So to do that, what you have to do, you have to support some product by investing money in them. In some products, you have to hold them. In some products, you should not invest, and you have to sell them and quit the business. So this decision making on SBUs is done by using a particular matrix which is known as GE McKenzie matrix. GE McKenzie matrix එක ගත්තහම මම කිව්වා වගේ ඉස්සෙල්ලා. So they have two main variables, like if you look at the X and Y axis, it's not essentially the X and Y axis. You can even alter them, right? So you have the market attractiveness and in one axis, and you have the business unit strength in another axis. So once the each product is given, right? So make a දැන් අපි මේ කියනකොට ලේසි වුණාට දැන් ඔයාගේ හැම business unit එකේම business strength එකත් ඔයා දැනගන්න ඕනි, industry attractiveness එකත් ඔයා දැනගන්න ඕනි. මේකෙදි ඔයාගේ හැම business unit එකේදීම උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් Unilever එකේ Flora එකේ දැන් ඔයා දැනගන්න ඕනි relative market share එක, market growth rate එක. ඔය හැමදේම ඔයා දැනගන්න ඕනි. So it's a kind of a huge hard work because you have to have lot of data in order to plot this business portfolio. I mean, please plot this matrix, right? So once you plot it, right? So if you have these determinants, if you have the business unit strength as well as the market attractiveness of your product, then what you can do, you can plot your plot your business units in your graph, like that I have plotted here the A, B, C, D. Then the GE metric McKenzie, sometimes we call this as the 9-box matrix, because in the graphs that you can see that there are 9 boxes where the product can be plotted, right? So once your product is in its place, then you can decide what is the strategy for that particular product, right? So the A කියන එකට අපි කිව්වේ strategy එක grow කියලා, C කියන එකට අපි කිව්වේ hold කියලා, D කියන එකට අපි කිව්වේ harvest කියලා. So these are the 3 strategies. So there are 3 main strategies in the GE McKenzie matrix, which are like grow, hold, and harvest. Grow කියලා කිව්වේ, that means you are ready to invest a higher percentage of your money or the resources in this particular business because it's a kind of a very promising business. It has high market attractiveness and high business unit strength. So they are most likely to be successful if you back up with them by more money and more resources, right? So that's why we have marked this particular quadrant in green color. So the green are the places where you can grow your business. So if you look at the yellow color area, so that is hold. So if the business unit strength or the attractiveness, so that is average, then what you can do, you can hold the business as it is. So that might, this might be due to several reasons. So the market is dropping in value, or that there may be kind of a huge competition. අපි අර කිව්වේ කොවිඩ් වෙලාවේදී ටුවරිසම් අඩු වුණාට හැමදාම ටුවරිසම් අඩු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මේ වෙලාවේදී අපේ කම්පිටිටර් හොඳට perform කරාට හැමතිස්සෙම එහෙම වෙන එකක් නැහැ. So these are the reasons, right? So that you might have a kind of a reducing or average market growth and growth rate and market strength. So therefore, what you have to do, you have to hold the business until the conditions turn into favorable. So in both the cases, the business unit might not give the optimum return, even though you invest in it. So therefore, in this case, what you have to do, so you have to wait and hold the business unit to see if the market environment changes, or if the business unit gains importance in market as compared to the other players. So this is what we call as a hold strategy. And then we have something which is known as a harvest. So harvest is the business unit of this red color area. So this is where that your business become more unattractive. So it's an unattractive. So what you have to do, you have to either sell your business or you have to liquidate, you have to wind up your business, right? So that can be done, right? Mm. So that's about the GE matrix. So now we are moving to the growth strategy. So if you look at නම් අපි අර මේකෙදි කිව්වනේ මේ green color area කියලා කියන්නේ grow කරන්න කිව්වා. මේ star කියන එක grow කරන්න තියෙන business එකක්. So no worries that you can grow your business. So once you decide that you are going to grow your business, so how can you grow your business? If you want to start knowing all about the growth of the company, then you need to start with the definition of the growth strategy. So how can you define the growth strategy? Grow වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? හැමතිස්සෙම grow වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ market share පුළුවන් තරම් වැඩි වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ. There may be lots of people who buy your products. So this is what we call as the grow, right? So how can you grow your business, right? So what are the options that you have in your hand? So either you can have new products, either you can have new markets, අලුතෙන් ගුරන්න පුළුවන් අලුත් product එකක් දාලා අලුත් market එකට යන්න පුළුවන්. So what are the options that you have in your hand? So this is what we are going to discuss here. To define the growth strategy, we can only say that it is a plan that need action to achieve higher level in the market share, right? So we feel like it's simple, but implementation is quite difficult, just like the analyzing metrics, analyzing your SBUs, right? So when we talk about the growth strategy, so you have 4 options in your hand based on your product and the market. So we call that as the Ansoff matrix. Ansoff matrix here. So that is the fundamental framework that is taught by the business schools worldwide. So the concept of market has different things. For an example, it could be a kind of a geography like a North American market. It could also be a mean customer segment, right? So like the target markets or demographic market. So when we're talking about the metrics, so you have to understand this. අපි දැන් මේ ANSOF matrix එක ගැන කතා කරාම ANSOF matrix එක දෙන්නේ criteria දෙකකට. So that is depend on the product and the market. අපි බලනවා product එකයි market එකයි. So you can see the axis. You can have the existing product and you can have the new product. You can have the existing market and you can have the new market. Product කියන එක අපි හැමෝම දන්නවා. Market එක ගත්තාම market එක කියන එකට, so there are two definition for the markets. Right? Product කියන එක ගත්තාම එකයි. හැබැයි market කියන එකට කියනවා two different things. එකක් තමයි market එක වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන් geographically. හරි? ඒ කියන්නේ so it can be geographically change. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගත්තොත් urban ඉඳන් අපි rural ඉඳන් අපි urban යනවා. ලංකාවේ ඉඳන් අපි Europe market එකට යනවා. නම් Asian market එකේ ඉඳන් Europe market එකට යනවා. එතකොට ඒක අලුත් තැනකට යන්නේ. Location වෙනස් වෙනවා. So it's a new market. And also there is another form of market. So that is the demographical change. අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලම target කරලා තියෙන්නේ young කට්ටියට විතරයි. දැන් අපි elderly කට්ටියට market කරනවා. So that's kind of shifting the market. So that's also a new market. So that's why I'm saying the market has two different definitions. So that is a geographical change and the other one is the demographical change, right? So based these categories, based on your products and the markets, we have categorized the growth strategies into 4 categories. So so that they have ranked according to the risk, that is they have ranked according to the associated risk actually, right? So if you look at the market penetration, that they have the least risk, and if you look at the diversification, it ranked as the 4 and it has highest risk. So when we talk the market penetration, you can see that we have the existing product, existing market. So that means we haven't changed the product and we haven't changed the market. So what happens? We neither change product no market. So what happens in here? So we call that as market penetration. Market penetration කියලා කියන්නේ product එක වෙනස් කරන්නෙත් නැතුව market එක වෙනස් කරන්නෙත් නැතුව කොහොමද share කරන්නේ? අපිට පුළුවන් promotion, advertising වැඩි කරන්න. So we can increase the promotion, we can make efficient our distribution channel, we can make our product more available for the customers, so then the customers might buy more and more. right? And we can make keep them in many places. We can increase the promotion, and also we can give a kind of a discount. So when once you give a discount, so what will happen then? That also increase your sales. So these are the stuff that you can do. So what we can do, that the market penetration, in the sense that we do not change the product, we do not change the market, but we use some other strategies in order to increase the market share. So you are penetrating into the market and grab lots of customers. So we call that as the market penetration. So this is the place where you have the least risk when you employing the market penetration strategy. So the management normally look to sell more of the existing product into the existing market. That is the market that is familiar with you. So that is why we are saying that we don't have any risk. So we have the existing relationship. So normally these strategies can use so there are large number of strategies that you can use to increase your market share, like increasing and strengthening your distributional process. You can reduce your prices, giving discount, and also you can acquire some your competitors markets, right? So these are the stuff that you have in your hand. So that's known as the market penetration. So the second one is the market development. So you don't change the product, but you go to a new market. So that's known as the market development. So the market development is less riskier than the product development, because when it comes to the product development, you have to invest a lot in research and development. So that is more risky, right? So this is why we call that the market development is less riskier than product development. So when we talk market development, that you have two options. Either you can go to a new location, or you can change your demographic. For an example, you think that you have a particular product, particular soft drink, smack, right? So you take that particular product from Sri Lanka to another country. So it's a new market. You don't change smack product, you don't change the soft drink, same package, everything is same, but you are taking that into a new market. So that is known as market development. On the other hand, you think that the Johnson's baby soap or baby shampoo is there. But you say, right, this shampoo is not just for the babies, or mothers also can apply this. So did you change? No, you didn't change anything, but you say initially you have targeted only the babies, but now you are saying that not only the babies, but also mothers can use it. So it's a kind of a market development. Another market is there. So that is mother. So that's a demographic change. We call it as the market development. And the next thing is product development. So you are producing a new product for the existing market. So the same market, but you are having a new product. For an example, for the Johnson's baby shampoo, right? So you're having the shampoo, you are getting a conditioner for the babies too, or a kind of a cream for babies too, right? Or a kind of a massage oil, right? So that's kind of new product development, but for the existing market. So that's called as the product development. And then we have diversification. So the diversification, in a sense, new market, new product. For an example, if you look at the Fair Handsome, the Fair and Lovely is their product, so that they are developing a new product which is known as the Fair Handsome. That is for the new market. So initially that they have targeted Fair and Lovely for the female, but the female market, but now they are targeting male market, right? So it's kind of a diversification where you are having a new product as well as a new market. So that when we talk diversification, but still that they are same category, and then we're going to have the fairness screening. So that is related diversification. But think that if you are using something, if you are producing something totally different, so that's known as unrelated diversification. So these are the growth strategies that you have in your hands. So once you try to grow your business, once you have done your strategic business unit analysis, then you have to decide where you're going to invest and invest or not. So you have to decide where you're going to grow your business. Once you have decided to grow one of your business unit, then you have to understand whatever the strategies that you have in your hand. So these are the business growth strategies that has been given by the Ansoff. So the market penetration is there, market development is there, product development and diversification. So the market penetration in the sense that increase the sales to the customers, so for the existing customers, for the existing products. So how can you do that? you can reduce the prices, you can increase the promotion, so you can make the products available in many stores, right? So you can increase the sales without changing either what market or the product, right? Then we have the market development. So you have to develop new markets with current products. So how can you do that? You can identify new demographic or geographic markets. You can go to a new segment in the market or new location. Then you have the product development. So you can modify your product. So you can have a new product, right? So how can you do? It can be a new product, new style, new flavor, new color, or a kind of a modified product. And the diversification is there. So the new products for the new markets. So sometimes you're starting up a new business, by a new business. So that's known as the diversification. So when we're talking about the strategic planning process, Lamar, so this is how it goes on. So this is what we have studied so far. So you might have seen, so we said that first you have to have the mission, you have to define the mission, then you have to set your objectives. So in order to within a following a mission, method goal formulation, so that is setting your objective. So this is our second step. So to do to move from first step to the second step, that you have to do your situation analysis. So this is why we did the organizational environment or the marketing environment. So you have to analyze your external environment, you have to analyze your internal environment too. So the external environment is where you have the micro factors and the macro factors. Micro factors in the sense the customers, suppliers, competitors, distributors, and the macro factors in the sense that the political factors, economical, social, and technological factors. So once you analyze the external factors, you will be getting your opportunities and threats. And when it comes to the internal environment, so that is within your organization, controllable environment. So where you have your employees, board of directors, infrastructures, human resource skills, everything inside. So that gives you the strength and weaknesses of your organization. So when you have your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you can do the SWOT analysis. So you can see how can you convert your weaknesses into strength and how you can match your strength with opportunities. So once you do this, then what you have to do, so you have to state or set your objective, so which is the second step. Then you have to formulate your strategy. So in order to formulate strategy, you have to do your SBU analysis, business portfolio analysis. Then you have your growth strategies, you have your program in order to grow your business, you have to implement them, and then you have to get your feedback. So this is how it goes on. Okay. So then when we're talking about the marketing process, right? So when we're talking about the entire process that we have discussed so far, so we call it as the marketing process. So when we talk marketing process, so it has been defined or it has been described in different books in different way. So the Kotler described marketing process in this way, like the analyzing market opportunities, developing market strategies, planning market programs, market managing the marketing effort. But in my case, I have changed it a little bit. So I have taken some of the stuff from the Kotler as well as from the other books, and I have changed the marketing process in this way to make it a little clear. So these are the 4 steps in the marketing process. So the first thing is that you have to do the market analysis or the situation analysis. Mission situation analysis. So you have to analyze your external environment and internal environments, and you have to come up with the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So this is what we call as the market analysis, situation analysis, and sometimes we call this as the marketing audit. Then you have to select your target markets. Right? So you know, Lama, so the epicenter of your business is customers. So when we're talking about the customers, it is not possible for you to target the entire population in Sri Lanka or entire population in globe, right? So what you have to do, you have to select the type of customers that you deal with. So you have to have the target market. There is another process to do that. We will be talking about that in next 2-3 slides. So that you have to select the target market. Then what you have to do, then you have to develop the marketing strategies for them, right? Marketing strategies. Then you have to think about the marketing mix and then the managing the marketing effort. So let's talk about these stuff in details. So just before we starting then, what we have to understand is that this is the snap picture of the marketing process as well as the marketing strategy and the factors that influencing marketing process. So if you look at the marketing process, you can see first you are planning, then you are implementing, then you are controlling. Plan කරන්න කලින් you have to analyze it. Analyze, plan, implement, and controlling. So this is the process. And also your target consumers are there. So your marketing mix, so this product, price, place, and promotion should be aligned with your target consumers, right? So that is the epicenter. So that is why it is centered. And also you have the micro factors that immediately impact towards your business. That is market intermediaries, suppliers, competitors, and public. And also you have the external factors that is outside the macro factors that indirectly impact towards your business, like technological, social, political, and demographic factors. Okay. Then thereafter, so if you can remember, right after the situation analysis, I said that you have to select your target consumers. Target consumers are select කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා. So how can you select your target consumers? So the first is, it's a kind of a process. My target consumers lava select කරන process එක, it's what we call as the STP process. We call it as STP process. So there are 3 steps that link to each other. So the first one is the market segmentation, second one is market targeting, and the third one is market positioning. So if you look at the first one, segmentation, so that is targeting T and P, STP. So this is why we call it as the STP process. So let's look at the first one, which is known as the market segmentation. Market segmentation එක කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි. So as I said before, it is difficult for you to target the entire population because you don't have enough resources and expertise, and it is not that profitable. So therefore, you have to select the best and most profitable market that you can deal with. So in order to do that, you have to cluster the entire population into small groups, right? So you can cluster these groups based on some criteria. Sometimes the demographic factors, sometimes the attitude, sometimes the personality, sometimes their buying behavior. So consider these stuff so you can have specified groups of buyers or the segment with different needs. We call them as the clusters in your population. එතකොට මේ cluster එකක් ඇතුලේ, so you find the individuals within the clusters have same characteristics so that they have similar buying needs. ඇතුලේ ඉන්නේ එක needs වල different needs වල තමයි එක එක cluster වල ඉන්නේ. Right? So when you are talking about a particular population, so if you categorize them based on the age, gender, income, occupation, personality, and all these stuff, you might having a particular cluster where you have the ladies in between 30 to 40, that they are working mom, that they have good status in the the society, and they earn well. So their buying needs little similar if you look at within the group, right? So that is a market, that is what we call now as market segmentation. That particular cluster is known as a market segment, right? So when you have the different clusters, now you have to target what is the type of customer that I'm going to deal with. So you have to target a particular segment or few segments sometimes, right? එකක් විතරක් නෙවෙයි, සමහර වෙලාවට clusters දෙකක් විතර ගන්නවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. For an example, Nivea or like Jovis, that they have their products. So then they might be targeting 2 clusters, like from 30 to 40 ladies, as well as the 20 to 20, 40, 18 to 20 girls, right? So that might be their clusters, I guess. I'm just assuming, right? So that might be targeting, right? So that you are selecting particular segment. So how do you select these segments? So when you are selecting the segment, so you have to think about 2 criteria. So you have to think that whether this cluster is profitable enough to target. ඒ කියන්නේ සමහර cluster එකක් ඇතුලේ ඉන්න ප්‍රමාණය පොඩි. ඇතුලේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සු ගාන පොඩි, population එක ඇතුලේ ඒ sample එක ඇතුලේ පොඩි ගාන. Right? ඒකේ disposable income වැඩි. Profitable one. And also you might have a kind of a big cluster where their disposable income is very low, but you have large number of people in that particular cluster. So you have to think about a particular cluster that is profitable enough. And also you have to think about your purchasing capacity. So when you are having a particular cluster where you have large number of people inside, you have to think whether you have this economies of scale to cater that particular scale. Right? So that is what we call as targeting. So in targeting, you have to evaluate and select which target segments to enter. So that has to be done based on two criteria. So that is profitability as well as your capacity to deal with that located that particular segment. දෙක කල්පනා කරලා considering two elements that you can select whatever the clusters that you're going to target. Once you have selected the particular segment, then what you have to do, you have to position your product. Right? So you have position, you have to target, and then you have position. So that means you have place your product in customer's mind. So how do you going to place it? Whether you're going to place your product as a high quality, high price, average quality but low price, right? So this is what you have to think, right? So that's known as the market positioning. Then thereafter, you have to decide your marketing mix. So when we're talking about the marketing mix, so we talk about four pieces where we have the product, price, place, and promotion. So it can be extended for the services like 7 pieces, and now we talk about even 8 pieces. So the product, price, place, promotion can be like can be extended into the 7 pieces like people and process as well as the physical environment, right? That you deal with. So basically here we will be talking about the product, price, place, and the promotion. So the product, in a sense, the goods and services, whatever the features that you have, so whatever the things that you offer. So the price, in a sense, the amount of money that you have to pay in order to get the right to use that particular product. And then you have the place, that means where you're going to make it available. So the stores and where you're going to distribute, whether you're going to use the retailers and all this stuff. Promotion, in a sense, that how you're going to communicate your product to the consumers. So when we're talking about these marketing mix, they are very important. So that is the heart of marketing. Therefore, we have four different chapters to discuss all these elements, right? And then we have something which is known as the managing marketing efforts. So how can you do the market analysis, then you are implementing and you're controlling. So this is the function that we have discussed, the managerial functions. Planning is there, implementation is there, control, implementation in a sense, leading and organizing together. So when we're talking about the market planning, so you have to develop the marketing strategies to achieve the marketing objectives. You have to have your plan, you have to have your budget, everything. And when it comes to the organizing and leading part, so you have to have action plans, so you have to allocate the resources and all this stuff. And the controlling, in a sense, whether you control whether you have achieved your marketing objectives or not, or will be able to achieve, or what are the correction actions that you have to make, right? And when we talk about the marketing implementation, sometimes you might have a kind of a very good, very well developed and a kind of a fully complete competent marketing plan and marketing strategies in it, but whether that will work well or not, so that is depend on few criteria, right? කොච්චර හොඳ strategy එකක් හොඳට develop කරලා plan එකක් ගහලා ඒක හොඳට perform වෙනවද නැද්ද කියන එක, so that determined by few other characters, right? So that is your organizational structure, whether it's a kind of a structure that promote the strategies, innovative and a kind of a very active, proactive culture එකක්ද තියෙන්නේ. Human resource එක ඒගොල්ලන්ට skill එකක් තියෙනවද? And the culture, whether your culture that they would like to make a change, and also how do you going to motivate them, whether you provide enough rewards to your human resource. So all this stuff impact towards the implementation. So that is why the strategies start in the broader way, but the implementation is something really less when we compare to the starting point. So that's known as the marketing performance. So here we have the marketing control. So that means how you can control your marketing campaign. So the marketing plan. So when we're talking about the marketing, so you are setting the marketing goals like objectives like to increase the sales by 5% within 6 months. At the 6 months, හදලා තියෙනවා නම් 1000ක් අපි කියනවා හරි ඔයා 1200ක් ඊළඟ මාස 6 ඇතුළත විකුණන්න ඕනේ කියලා. ඒතර එහෙම වෙන්න නම් you measure the performance. ඒක තමයි goal එක. So you have to measure the performance, actual performance right now. එතකොට මාස 3කට පස්සේ ඔයාට ඕන නම් බලන්න පුළුවන් 6 මෙයා නැතුව. So you can check them interimly. So you measure the performance. So you check that the number of products that you have sold, right? And you can evaluate the performance. Compare කරනවා හරි මේ ගානේ යන්න නම් අඩුම ගානේ මං 600ක් මේ වෙද්දි විතරන්න ඕනේ, but I have solved right just 500. So you have to evaluate the option and take the corrective actions. So once when you're having a marketing plan, so what you have to do, so what are the components that you have to have in your marketing plan? So as a marketing executive, sometimes assistant marketing manager, you might be need to prepare your own marketing plan. So you have to document this and that, and you have to prepare it, and you have to provide it to your top management. So in a marketing plan, so these are the components that you should have in executive summary should be there, current marketing situations, threat and opportunities, objectives and issues, marketing strategies, action programs, budget controls, all the stuff that we have discussed so far. So you have these 3 questions too, but for the moment, so you just go to the second chapter that we did and answer to those questions, and then no, not just skip the second one, right? Don't do the second one, just do the third one, and I'll give you 30 minutes in order to upload it, right? Uh, 30, to prepare that one, so you will be able to upload it until 12:30, right? So we will be taking the break until 12. Okay? 11 in the 11:30 වෙනකල් prepare කරන්න මම time එක දෙනවා. මේ answer script එක word document එකයි, one page. Times New Roman 12 එක හදන්න. ඊළඟට එක page එකකට ලියන්න. ඊට පස්සේ 12 වෙනකල් 11 මාර වෙනකල් එක හදන්න. 11 මාර ඉඳන් 12 වෙනකල් break එක. ඊළඟට 12ට මම පටන් ගන්නවා. 12:30 වෙද්දී link එක මේවා වෙයි. link එක වැහේ. මම දැන් link එක open කරන්න.
Recording
So this is the fourth chapter, and we will be starting to talk about the B2C and B2B marketing. So when we're talking about the customers, as I said you before, that the customer is the person who is buying your product. So when we're talking about the customers, that they might be buying for their own consumption as well as for other purposes. I mean, that they might buy your product and they might use that to produce another product or service to sell again. So when we're talking about this, the customers can be මර අපි කලින් කතා කරනකොට කිව්වේ there are five customer groups කියලා. So we said that the customer can be a consumer, business, government, international market. So we talk about a lot of stuff. So when we're talking about here, we are basically talking about two type of customers. First one is the customer who buy the product for their own consumption, which is known as the consumers. And then we have, on the other hand, the businesses who buy your products in order to produce another product or service. So this is what it says, the B2C market, B2B market. So the business to the customer, sorry, business to the consumer, business to the business. So we'll be talking about first about the consumer markets and consumer buying behavior, and then we will be talking about the business markets and business buying behavior. So when we're talking about the consumer buying behavior, why it is important to understand the consumer buying behavior and what does it mean by the consumer buying behavior? So the consumer, in a sense, as I said you before, that means that you buy the product. So the final consumers, that might be the individual or the household, you might be buying for your consumption or else for your household consumptions, who buy the goods and services for the personal consumption. So this is what we call as the consumers. So when you buy the products, whatever your buying behavior, so what does it mean by the buying behavior? So that means from where you buy the products, right? So the number of products that you buy at once, so the quantity, that means, so whether you buy in bulk or like product wise, so the way that you buy at the time that you purchase. So whether you are a kind of a seasonal buyer when there are discounts, or if there is a tendency of buying more, right? So this is what we call as the buying behavior. How sensitive you for the discounts, how sensitive you for the promotions, as well as the places where you buy, whether you buy online or whether you come to whether you physically visit the shopping malls. So that is known as the consumer buying behavior. So why it is important for the marketers to understand this buying behavior? Because your marketing mix should be aligned with the consumer's buying behavior. So you should look at whatever the features that these customers looking for in order to set your product features. And also you should have an idea about where the customers looking for the information to set your promotional strategies. And also you have to understand how sensitive the customers to the prices in order to set your prices. And also you should understand where the customers buy your product in order to set your places and the distributional channels. So it is important to understand the consumer buying behavior as a marketer, because you have to set your marketing mix aligned with the consumer buying behavior. So how do the consumers respond to the marketing effort? Once again. Okay, so that's what we call the consumer buying behavior. So that is why it is important to understand the consumer buying behavior, because the marketing can align his marketing strategies that is fit to the consumer's buying behavior. So, how do the consumer respond to the marketing efforts the company might use? So that depends on the how successfully that you align marketing strategies with the consumer behavior. So when we're talking about the model of consumer buying behavior, so that means how you make the decisions. So that can be represented as a kind of a model. So when we're talking about the human behavior, let's just forget about the consumer buying behavior. So when we're talking about the human behavior, so if somebody asks you to represent the human behavior through a model, so mathematical representation, it is something really difficult and different, right? Because when it comes to people that they think something and they tell something else and they act totally differently. So therefore, when it comes to the human behavior, so it is really difficult for you to mathematically represent them in that equation in a model because it's change in that manner. So there are many variables that might impact towards the human behavior. So just like that, the consumer behavior is also difficult to represent through a model, but still, when it comes to the marketing decision making, so we just represent the consumer buying behavior model in this way. So we say that when it comes to the human consumers buying, purchasing intention comes through the marketing and other stimuli. So that means you might see a particular promotion, or sometimes you feel exactly that, of course, I need something. So this is why you are buying. Sometimes you don't need to buy. Really, you don't have this necessity, but still you look at a particular person or you look at a particular advertisement and then you feel like, okay, I need to buy that. Okay. So that's known as the marketing and other stimuli. So there are many factors that impact this stimulation. So the best factors, the macro factors, as well as the marketing mix. So you have to match your marketing mix with this marketing stimuli. And then it comes to the buyer's black box. So as I said you before, so they think something else, so they act differently collectively. So when we're talking about the buyers, that they have something known as the black box. So this is where the decision take place. So that depends on their characteristics as well as their behavior as well as their attitudes. So that's known as the buyer's decision process. And then how the buyers respond. So even though you come to a certain decision, but still at the point of purchase කරන වෙලාවේදී purchase කරන තැනේදීත් වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මේ decision එක. සමහර වෙලාවට ඔය අනුකොට product එක එතන available නැත්නම් ඔය වෙන model එකකට යන්න පුළුවන්. color එක නැත්නම් වෙන color එකකට යන්න පුළුවන්. ඒගොල්ලෝ warranty එකක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ කිව්වොත් යන්න පුළුවන්. ඊළඟට timing purchasing. So that everything matters. Right? So the product choice, brand choice, dealer's choice, so that depends on the purchasing time and the purchasing amount. So that's the buyer's response. So this is what we call as the model of consumer buying behavior. So let's talk about the factors that affect the consumer buying behavior. So we're going to talk about that if you look at the buyer, that is, he's at the center. So there are psychological factors, personal factors, as well as social and cultural factors that impact towards the buyers in order to make his buying decision. Right. And when we're talking about the someone is writing, and please stop writing, right? And when we're talking about the factors affecting the consumer behavior, so we are starting from the culture. You know that we all come to the earth without anything, right? So we just come without no identity actually, right? So we don't know what is our religion, we don't know what is the language that we are going to talk, and we don't know anything. But right after that, we are raised in a kind of a culture, set of people that who we call our relatives, our mother, parents, mom, dad, and parents are there. Then immediate circle, family circle is there. So we are raised in that particular culture. So whatever the culture that they but that they raised, or whatever the religion that they used to follow, that they inculcate that into us, right? ඒගොල්ලෝ අවිරි විදිහටම තමයි ඊට පස්සේ අපි යන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලෝ කතා කරන විදිහට තමයි අපි ඊට පස්සේ කතා කරන්නේ. ඒකනේ අපි දැන් ලංකාවේ කෙනෙක් ලංකාවේ ඉඳන් ඉංග්‍රීසි කතා කරනකොට අපේ ඇක්සන්ට් එක වෙනයි. ඒ වගේම ලංකාවේ ළමයි පිටරටකට ගිහිල්ලා දැම්මම එතනදී ඉංග්‍රීසි කතා කරන විදිය වෙනයි. So that's because of the culture that you raise. So that's the way that they speak. So this is what you have to understand, right? So the culture, the way that you eat and the things that you eat, everything, so that is inculcated from your parents as well as your relatives. So that is what we call as a culture. So when we're talking about your buying behavior, basically determined by your culture. For an example, if you just look at a Muslim person, so that he would not like, he eats halal foods because that is the culture that he has been raised. If you look at most of the majority of the Buddhist people, that they don't eat, and Hindu people, that they don't eat beef. So that is how they have been raised. Right. So you have to understand their cultural values and the perception. And also sometimes when we get into fit into another culture, right? So for an example, a person that who have raised in a one culture, that he goes to an international school, and that there is a kind of another subculture that's there. So you get adapted into that. And also when you come to the university, there is another subculture. So all these cultures matters, and that impact towards your buying behavior. So you have to understand that. Also, the culture, the subculture is also part of culture, and also the social class. So when we're talking about the social class, right? So right after the culture, sometimes you get an option to get into a social class. So your occupation, your income, your education, your wealth. So that determines in which social class that you would like to position yourself. So to prove that yourself in that particular class, that you have to you change your purchasing behavior to prove that your social class. So that happens. සමහර කට්ටිය branded දේවල් පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ හැම දෙයක්ම කරන්නේ සමහරලාට මම මේ social class එකේ ඉන්නවා කියන එක prove කරන්න. So that's there. So this is what we call as the culture. Culture has a huge impact towards the consumer buying behavior. And then we have some social factors. Social factors in a sense that when it comes to people that they are in a particular group. So we know that when we're talking about the human, we talk about the human relationships and interactions, networking. And so you are always a part of a group. You're not an individual always. So once you go to the school or a college or a kind of a university, you are a student and you are in a kind of a society. Also when you are at the workplace, so you are an employee and you have to work with your co-workers. So when you're in a family, so there are the family members. When you're in a friend circle, so you have other colleagues that who works with you. So you have to understand that you are always part in a group. So when you're part in a group, so you always a membership and the reference. So you take the references whenever somebody in your group do something, that you always tend to follow that. So that happens, right? So this is what you have to understand. And also we have the family, that they also impact towards your purchasing behavior, right? So when you are married, you just think about yourself just before the marriage and right after the marriage. So just before the marriage, the way that you have spent. So you have spent more on the luxury items, so for the fashion items, for the clothes and all this stuff. But right after the marriage, then you will be starting to save money, sometimes for the travel purposes, sometimes for for preparing a house, for buying a car. Then thereafter, you might be having kids. Soon after you are having kids, then you have to save more for their education and those stuff. So you will be reducing your the money that you have spent for your personal usage. So you do not spend much more on your mobile phones or perfumes or whatever the things that you use to buy. So these are the social factors that impact towards your buying behavior. And also your roles and status, because your roles and the status, sometimes in order to maintain your status, for an example, when you're becoming a kind of a surgeon or a kind of a head of the department, so you always love to make your status through the things that you use. So if the people who report to you use something, a kind of a better brand or a kind of a better version of a phone, you feel like, okay, even he use it, so I should use something better than that. So this is what we call as the roles and the status. So social factors that impact towards your buying behavior. So that's what you have to understand. And then the personal factors, the personal influences. So the age and the family life cycle. So as I said you before, just like the social factors, when it comes to a particular person, that you have a life cycle. So we come to the earth, our birth is there, then we grow, and it comes to the young age, then we come to the maturity, we getting married, and then we have kids. So then we getting old and we die. So this is our life cycle. So along the life cycle, so our buying behavior changes, right? So at the growing stage, what will happen? So until young, so just before the marriage, so we spend a lot of money and so we have fun, all this stuff happens. And right after the marriage, we start to save. And right after the kids, we save more and more. Then again, once they have finished their education, once they are married, so we have enough money to spend for ourselves, right? So now we are looking for the places where we like to travel and all this stuff. So this is what you have to understand. So your purchasing behavior, the purchasing decisions, that changes with the life cycle and your age. And also your economic situation, whether you have money or not, right? So that also depends on your occupation and your personality as well as the self-concept. That is also something very important. Personality and the self-concept. Sometimes some people, the personality, sometimes they don't like to dress much well. Sometimes there are people that too are overdressed, right? So that's their personality and the self-concept. So that also determine your consumer buying behavior. And also your lifestyle and the identification. Sometimes there might be people who have a lot of money, but they do not like to spend money on the branded items. That they specifically say, no, I don't spend money on unnecessary branded stuff or luxury items because I don't feel that it is needed, right? So that's their opinion. So that's what you have to understand. And also there might be some of the people who would like to do charities, that their interest. So they spend more money on the charities and for the good causes. Right. And also there might be some of the people who engage with the fun activities that their lifestyle, that they like to go to the pubs every Friday for the karaoke's and for the PlayStations, and that is those activities that they would like to engage with. So that impact towards your consumers' buying behavior, their lifestyle, and their identification. And also, when we're talking about the psychological factors, so there's those factors also impact towards the consumer buying behavior. So, what are the psychological factors that might impact towards the consumer's buying behavior? So, the first thing is the learning. You know that learning in a sense that you learn something from your experience. So sometimes that it's your own experience, or sometimes somebody else experience and they recommends you, right? So this is what happened. So when we're talking about somebody who have used a particular product before, so if it's good, he will buy it again. It's not that he won't buy it again. So that is learning. Also, he might get recommendation from somebody else who have used it before. So this is what we call as the learning. Sometimes you do not learn anything, but you have a kind of a perception. Okay, this is good. There's nothing better than that. Sometimes this happens with HP for me, right? So I have been using HP for a long, long time. I mean, so my the first laptop, second, third, and I think this is my sixth one, and still I'm using HP. But I feel like that it's getting more. I mean, if you look at my laptop, the one I used before, so that it's the heating system, I mean, the cooling system doesn't work, it seems, properly. So the battery get damaged easily. So this is my issue. This is an issue. So I have to replace my previous laptop soon with my new laptop. I have realized that there is an issue. I have realized that still I have an issue with my new laptop, but still I have a kind of a perception HP is the best. So I always used to buy the HP. So there are people who buy Apple, and there are people who buy Samsung. So this is their perception, right? So that's something. And also the motivations. The motivation in a sense that you know that so our behavior always influenced by some factors, right? So they might be monetary, they might be like emotional factors, intrinsic factors, extrinsic factors. So that is what we call as a motivation. So it's always our behavior influenced by the other factors. So we'll be talking about the motivation in our next slide. And also we have talked enough actually. If you can remember, when we were studying management, there was a separate lesson called motivation, and we have talked about more than 5 motivational theories like Maslow's hierarchy, ERG theory, hygiene theory, two-factor theory, right? So goal setting theory. So these are the stuff. Expectancy theory, right? And then the beliefs and attitudes. So you have some beliefs and attitudes. So මම අර ඉස්සරහ කිව්වා වගේ අපි spend කරන්නේ නෑ වැඩි මේ luxury item එකට. ඒක කිසිම තේරුමක් නෑ. ඊළඟට I'm kind of an environmental friendly person, and I always try to reduce my ecological footprint කියලා කවුරු හරි කියන්න පුළුවන්. So that happens. Right? So these are the factors that impact towards your buying behavior. And this is when it comes to motivation. So human buying behavior, I would say the consumer buying behavior that is always aligned with the Maslow's hierarchy. So that means the consumer's needs might change across his life cycle. So that can be represented through Maslow's hierarchy, where he has given some needs in a kind of a hierarchical order. And so there is a kind of a ladder where you have low order needs at the bottom and the high order needs at the top, right? So if you look at the physiological needs like the hunger and thirst, so at the initial stage that you are looking for a salary, මට ඉස්සෙල්ලාම මම හොයන්නේ salary එකක් මට නිකන් කාලා බීලා ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් physiological needs cover කරන්න. At that time, so you have to understand as an organization that this particular consumer is looking for the basic stuff, not the luxury, not the branded, not the shopping items, right? So physiological needs, hunger and thirst. Then right after that, I go to the safety needs. So I'm looking for the security and the protection. So when I'm buying a food, I'm looking for the hygienic, right? Not the tasty most, right? So that's there. And then when it comes to social needs. So right after the safety, I'm looking for the belongingness. I'm looking for the love, and I'm looking for the relationship. And this is the time that where you go for the parties and those activities and all this stuff. And then it comes to the esteem needs and then the self-actualization. So the esteem needs in a sense that you try to improve yourself, and self-actualization in a sense you come to the best point that in your life level. So in that case you are looking for the luxury items, branded items, so you are trying to have the best in the market. So you have to understand this motivation theory too. So when we're talking about the buying decision, Samar, so you can categorize buying behavior into two categories based on the customer's involvement as well as the differences in the brand, right? So, I mean, how the variety of the brands available as well as the involvement, the customer involvement in making decisions. Because when you sometimes make the decisions, so you don't think much sometimes. You take like 2-3 minutes and you make your decision. In some cases, you really engage in it and you really gather information, you analyze them and you make the decision. So that is your involvement. So based on the customer involvement as well as the significant differences in the brand, so the variety of the brand, so we categorize the buying decisions into 4 categories. So the first one is the complex buying behavior, which is known as the high involvement is there and significant differences between the brands. So when it comes to the brand, one brand is totally different from the other brands. So it's a kind of a high involvement is there. So the complex buying behavior. So this is actually, I would say that the automobile sector is like a complex buying behavior. So the Honda, Toyota, and all these stuff. So they are BMW and Mercedes-Benz. So they are significantly different in brand, right? So then customer that when they buy a particular vehicle, so that they get involved in it and they make the decision very carefully, they gather information. So it's a kind of complex buying behavior. Then you have variety seeking behavior. So where you have low involvement. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගිහලා හිතන්නකො බඩුවක් ඇඳුමක් ගන්න යනවා කියලා. හරිද? So there may be lots of varieties, brands available, but your involvement is low and you just go and buy them, right? And then you have the dissonance reducing behavior. So that means high involvement, but the brand difference is there is few. I mean, when it comes to the communication partners, you don't have any options in Sri Lanka. You have to go either for the Mobitel or the Dialog. So, but still the customers involvement, when it comes to the involvement, it's really high, right? So that is known as the dissonance reducing buying behavior. Then you have habitual buying behavior, which is known as low involvement, and you have a few differences between the brands. So where you do not can FMCG market technically, so you have doing habitual buying behavior. So how do you make the decision? So when we're talking about the consumers, when they make the decision, so they have to go through a particular process, which is known as the buying decision process. It doesn't matter whether you're going to buy something very simple, like fast moving consumer goods. When you buy a toothpaste, a soap, or a kind of product like a car or a house, whatever the complex product or the simple products, whatever the product that you're going to buy, that you have to go through this process, right? So irrespective to the complexity of the product, so you have to go through the process, but still the difference is the time that you take to make take to make the decision. In some cases, for an example, when you're buying a toothpaste, you go through all these steps, but you don't know even that you go through this process because you take this decision in a kind of 3 to 2 seconds. But when it comes to these complex decisions like buying a car, buying a house, so then you go through this decision and you make it takes a little time to make these decisions. So let's talk about these decisions now, right? So there are 5 steps in consumer buying decisions. So the first one is the need recognition, and the second one is the information search, and the third one is the evaluation of alternatives, and the fourth one is the purchase decision, and the fifth one is the post-purchase decisions. So when we talk first also, that is the need recognition. So we said that why people are buying things, because that they have a need. So first you have to understand whether you have a need or the requirement to buy. So then only you will buy things. So this is the first step. So the need recognition. Sometimes you have a real needs, right? So we call it as an internal stimuli. So for an example, when you feel hungry, of course you feel hungry, you need something to eat. So this is why you're buying something. When you feel thirsty, of course you need something to drink. So this is a kind of an internal stimuli. So exactly a real need is there. So that's what we call internal stimuli. When there is no real need, so we call it as an external stimuli. So the need has been triggered by an external factor. For an example, like TV advertising, magazine, or someone who's using that, right? So your friend is there, you have a mobile phone, good one. But still, there is someone who is using a new version. So you would like, now you feel like that, okay, I would like to, I also need to buy this particular version. And so it's known as an external stimuli. Right, so this is what we call as the need recognition. So that is the step 1. So just after the first step, we move to the second step. Now you know that you have a need. So now you have to buy something. So what you have to do? So you have to collect the information. You have to collect the information on the products that is available in the market, their prices, their features, and all this stuff. Right? So you have to check for the information. So from where you can get the information? So what are the sources that you have in your hand? So first you will be looking for your comfort zone, I mean the immediate zone. You will be getting the information from your friends, your family, your neighbors. So these are known as the personal sources, right? And then you have your commercial sources that you're looking for the advertisement, you're looking for the catalog, sales people, right? So that's known as a commercial source. And then you are going for the public sources. So when you're looking about the mass media and also these FB groups, that ratings, reviews, unboxing videos. So these are the public sources. And then you have the experiential sources, also a kind of this something, right? And when it comes to the experiential sources, sometimes you go to a kind of an event and you get the product and you use for a while. So that's known as the experiential sources, right? So these are the sources where you get the information. Then what are the information that you get? Because you have to now compare. Right? Then compare කරන්න යන්නේ මේ information ටික අරගෙන. So what are the things that you're going to compare? So you are evaluate for the alternatives, right? So first you check the product attributes. For an example, you think that you're going to buy a mobile phone. So you are taking some of the versions in Samsung and some of the versions in Apple, right? 15 ගන්න, 16 ගන්න. දැන් ඔය versions ටික තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා. ඒවා compare කරන්න යන්නේ. So what are the things that you're going to compare? So you compare the product attributes. So you compare the quality, you compare their prices, you compare their features and all this stuff. So you have a kind of a list now. You compare, right? That there are many people who have done this comparison already now, right? So if you look at the website, so you can see that they compare most of the time the vehicles, right? So that they compare some of the EV vehicles with the others, right? So there are many options. And also, so the product attributes is the first one. Then you have to think about your importance. Which attribute matters most to me? Whether it's the quality, it doesn't matter that the quality is good, but I don't have enough money to buy it. So the money is my priority, right? The price is my priority. And also the features. So you have to think about what is your focus, whether it's the quality, price, features. For an example, when a particular software engineer buying a laptop, so it's not the price that he's thinking about, but the features that they have, right? So you have to think about it, not even the durability. So he thinks about the features because he knows that he has to replace that with it 1 to 2 Yes, right? So you have to think about the degree of the importance. And then the brand belief. So you have to think about how do I believe about each available brand. So how do I believe about Samsung, Huawei, or Apple, or like any other Oppo, or any other thing, right? And then total product satisfaction. You have to think about you have to compare the price, quality, features, and everything. And you have to think my total satisfaction, right? So whether I'm satisfied, sometimes there might be a kind of a mobile phone for the for reasonable price. They have some features with the kind of quality. So I might be satisfied with that particular product rather than a high quality, high features with the product with the many features, but for the very high price. So my total satisfaction also matters, right? And then right after the evaluation procedure, that you have to think about what is the version that I'm going to buy and what is the brand that I'm going to buy, so that has to be done. So that is evaluation of alternatives. So soon after the purchasing decision, then what happens? You go to the shop and you try to make your purchase. So once you go there, sometimes there might be a particular a person, a salesperson, that he comes and tell you, okay, there are okay, you have decided to buy this, but my advice is to buy this thing because that there are many complaints that came from the customers. He just what do you call? He's just convinced you to buy something else. So whether you're going for another brand or not, so that is depends on your attitudes towards the others, right? So that's also something important. And also unexpected situational factors. So suppose you when you go there, he says, okay, that model is not available, that color is not available, but this is there, this is something very similar to that. So you can go for this, right? So he might say that. So at even the point of purchasing, you might change your decision at the point of purchasing, right? So you have to understand that. So then soon after you made your purchase, right? So then we have the post purchase behavior. So whether you are becoming satisfied or dissatisfied, so that depends at this particular stage. So just before you purchase your product, so you have your expectation, not expectation, like a feeling. For like a gut, you see the real performances. That's your perceived value. So whether you have expected something more or less, so that determine your satisfaction. So if you have received what you have expected, then you are becoming a satisfied customer. If not, you are becoming a dissatisfied customer, right? So that is depend on your cognitive dissonance too. That means අර මං කිව්වේ ඉස්සෙල්ලාම customer ගේ expectation එක කියන එක එක customer ගෙන් වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර වෙලාවට ඔයා දෙන service එක එක customer කෙනෙක්ට more than enough, but that might be different from some customer for another customer, right? So this is what you have to understand. And also, Rama, when we're talking about the stages in the adoption process, once you launch a particular product, once you launch a particular product, not everyone come and use your product, so that won't happen. Right? So only very few people in the total market will come and grab your product. So because to purchase your product, that they have to go through a certain process which is known as the adoption process. So here we are going to talk about this adoption process where you are talking about the awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption. So this is something that is aligned with consumer buying behavior process. So if you look at the consumer buying behavior process, we talk about the need, information search, evaluation. So that moves with these steps. Right. So the first one is the awareness. So introducing a product in the market and creating awareness for that product. So that is the first stage of the consumer adoption process. Right? So if you look at about the companies, organization, that they invest lot of money in creative or information, in creating information for the consumers and their customers, right? So that means you make them aware that this product is available, this brand is there, these features are there, all these stuff, right? So the making customer aware of the existence product, so that ensure the existence of that materials, that they can use videos, banners, and the teasers and so on. And when we talk the companies that they use large number of tools in order to engage with the consumers to make them aware, right? So if you can create a kind of a strong, attractive presence for the newly launched product, so that can attract more customers, right? So when you consider today's scenario in this era, right, for internet marketing and online shopping and social media, right? So that these social media activities, advertising like unboxing videos and also this TikTok, Instagram videos, as well as ratings, consumer ratings, and all these stuffs have made marketers many advertising tools that are available to create awareness about their products uh, in the consumer market. So the second stage is the interest. Now customers know about your product. They know that your product exists and they know the brand, they know the features. Now what you have to do, you have to create an interest to purchase this. So during this phase of the adoption process, the consumer that they know about it, they are informed about the product itself. So now what you have to do, so you have to have select a particular unique feature. You have to think about the particular deliveries of the product, and then you have to talk about it. So you have to create and maintain the interest of the customers by your product. So that is something really necessary. This is why the marketers use some of the promotional channels which can easily accessible to the targeted market. Sometimes you are using kind of a magazine, some kind of banners, some kind of tools that to make them interest. If we look at the Coca-Cola, right? So that they always use these kind of interesting campaigns in order to create customers' interest to purchase the product, right? So you might have seen in each and every season that they use these kind of holistic advertisement all the time in order to create an interest. Then you have the product evaluation. So the consumers, right? Soon after the you have created interest, now what you have to do, that this is the evaluation stage where the consumer search for the information about the product options and the brand available in the market. So they might surf online and they learn about the new brands and the market. So that is very common nowadays, right? So the customers normally, you know, that they use large number of social media channels, online shopping sites, and other media channels to learn and explore the product. So there may be lots of consumer recommendation, online reviews, suggestions from online groups. So in this phase, the consumer that they verify, they validate whatever the benefits and the disbenefits or the pros and cons of the products, right? So then they think about whatever the substitutes available in the market, and they think about the value for the money, right? So that's also something important to understand. And then you have the trial stage. So this is the phase of the consumer adoption process that the consumer use the product on a trial basis, right? Sometimes you might see that when you in the supermarket, people come and ask you to try this out, right? So trying out the actual products gives the consumer the idea of the product and its benefits, right? So the trial is the most important stage because entire product acceptance. So whether you are going to continuously adopting this or not, or reject this, that is depend upon your trial phase. So the company can sometimes provide free samples and trial products as part of their marketing campaigns, as they do in some of the supermarket chains, right? So free sampling is kind of a very important because this will the consumer expectation about the product, right? Sometimes you buy it for the first time and that will be the last time too, right? Then you have the product adoption. So the consumer is ready to adopt the product. That means he is ready to actually spend money for that particular product. First time he spend money, that is as a trial. So then now he feel like, okay, this is really good. Now I'll be continuing buying this perfume forever, right? So that's known as the adoption phase. So that is the most critical stage in the whole process, as the companies need the consumers to accept the product and completely adopt it, right? So the company needs to understand, and they have to ensure that the availability of their products, quality and easiness of use, and the accessibility of that particular product to the consumers at this time, right? And then when we're talking about the adoption of innovation, if you can remember when I was talking about the adoption, I said once you launch a product, so no one comes and grab you directly. That right? It's just a very small portion in the market will buy your product first. So that might be like 2.5%. We call them as the innovators, right? අලුතෙන්ම product එකක් market එකට දැම්මම ඔක්කොම ඇවිල්ලා ගන්නේ නැහැ product එක. 2.5 වගේ risk එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් සල්ලි ගියත් එකයි ආවත් එකයි කියලා හිතන මිනිස්සු තමයි ඉස්සෙල්ලාම ඒ ටික අරගන්නේ. So we call them as the innovators. So we call that is just like the 2.5% from the total population. Then thereafter, there will be people who get the recommendation from the innovators and buy your product. So we call them as the early adopters, right? So then right after the early adopters, there will be people who call the early majority. So that is the majority of the population, half majority of the population. So this 34%, so that they get the recommendation from the early adopters as well as the innovators. Then thereafter, we have the risk-averse people who do not like to take the risk. So they wait until half of the population use your product, right? Then only they will buy. So that is known as the late majority. So then there is a kind of another category which is known as the laggards. So they are the people who are very sensitive to the prices, that they are waiting until you go for this discount. Sometimes they are the people who go for the second market, right? So use products done in second market. So that's known as the laggards. Then, so how fast you adopt a particular product? කොච්චර ඉක්මනට මේ cycle එක දිගේ යනවද? So that is depend on certain criteria. So the first one is the relative advantage, right? So if you think about a particular product, so that if it has a kind of innovation and superior to the existing product, so the EV vehicles, if you can see that they are very comparatively cheap in the market, and also that they are electrically supported, and also there may be some vehicles that is they are blended with the fuel option too. So there is a kind of a relative advantage. So there are people that there is a tendency to adopt them faster, right? So that's because of its relative advantage, and also the compatibility, right? So when we're talking about a particular innovation, if it fit the values and experiencing of the target market, so the compatibility. So you know that this energy consumption, right? So now we're talking about the energy. We always try to reduce the fuel consumption. So we know that whatever the crisis that we had earlier, and also it's a country with where we have a huge solar energy. So that is compatible. So this is why people adopt it fastly. And also the complexity. So you have to think about the complexity. So if it's really complex, then the people won't buy, right? If it's the charging is complex, if the operations complex, right? So then there is a difficulty of adapting. And also the divisibility. So can the innovation be used on a trial basis? So whether you get a chance to use the trial, right? So that also is something important to understand. And also the communication ability, right? So if you can easily communicate whatever the benefits and the user performance and everything, so then also the customers ready to adopt it fast. So these are the characteristics that impact how fast customer adapt into a particular product or not, right? So here, this is a kind of a review question. So you have to say that you have to state the 5 steps of consumer buying decision process. So that's about the consumer buying behavior. And now we are going to talk about the business markets and business buying behavior. So the businesses, in a sense, that they are the customers who buy their products or services in order to produce a new product, another product or services. So it might be the organizations that they buy the goods and services. They use them in order to produce other products and services that is to be sold, right? So when we're talking about the business market, you have to understand, it's really important to understand and study the business market, because that they deal with huge quantities, and the dollar amount of this transaction is really huge. So if you just think about the household purchase, right? Just think, I'm going to buy a laptop for my usage. So I'll be buying just one. But when it comes to the university, we will be buying like 10, at least 10 laptops at once. So then it's a kind of a huge quantity. So that we do bulk purchase, right? So therefore, you have to understand the importance of that market. Or අපි කියන්නේ parrot theory කියලා අර කියන්නේ ලොකු කස්ටමර්ස් ලගෙන් තමයි අපිට ලොකු ප්‍රොෆිට් එකක් හම්බෙන්නේ. කස්ටමර්ස් ලව අපි රෑන්ක් කරොත් උඩිනම් පල්ලෙහාට from based on their dollar value. දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් අපෙන් ගන්න ලොකු කස්ටමර්ස් ලා ගත්තාම ඉස්සෙල්ලාම බිස්නස් කස්ටමර්ස් ලා අපි හිතමු අපෙන් ලැප්ටොප්ස් ගන්නවා JKH එක Unilever එක ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි වැඩිපුර ගන්න. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි on top තියෙන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි consumers ලා යටට එන්නේ. So if you look at the first top, right, so you will see that the 80%, the first 20% will create 80% of the profit. So this is why we have to give priority for those business customers. Anyway, when we're talking about the business market, that they are totally different from the consumer market. So why it makes difference business markets from consumer market. So you have to understand their characteristics. So the first one is the market structure and the demand. So when we're talking about the marketing structure and the demand, so you know that when it comes to the business market, you don't have many business customers. You only have few buyers, but they're large buyers. For an example, if you look at the US, dairy and meat, cheese and market, right? Meat or cheese we got the Burger King එකයි McDonald එක purchase කරන farmers ලගෙන්. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ භාගයක්ම meat or cheese we got එතනින්, right? So they only two buyers, but they buy large quantities. So they are larger buyers and they are few buyers, right? So this is what you have to understand. And also most of these kind of buyers are geographically concentrated. So if you look at most of the දැන් අපි හිතමු BOS ඕනේ කියන්නේ ගොඩක් garment factories තියෙනවා, right? So that they purchase fabrics and yarns from China, right? So it's a kind of a B2B market, geographically concentrated, right? So this is what you have to understand. And also the demand derived from the consumers, right? So when we're talking about the burgers, right? So whether they buy a lot of meat or cheese, so that is depend on the demand for the burgers. Ultimate demand comes from the consumers. Burger වලට demand එක වැඩි නම් තමයි demand එක වැඩි වෙන්නේ cheese වලට. So the demand derived from the consumers. And also there is a kind of an inelastic demand. So you know when it comes to the industry level, so that when you reduce the prices and when you increase the prices, it doesn't much impact towards your business, right? So there is a kind of a fluctuating demand because of other pest factors. And also when we're talking about the buying units, right, there are many buyers, you know, as I said you before. So this the transaction amount, I mean, that is huge, right? The dollar value of the transaction is really huge. Therefore, the risk of buying is really huge. Nobody would like to go into prison. No person is like to stay behind the iron bars. Therefore, they always like to distribute the risk. So therefore, there are a large number of buyers who involved in business decision making. More buyers are there, and also more professional buyers that they have been trained to make the purchases. They are looking for the tenders, quotations, and they are doing evaluate the proposals. Then they sign for that. Then they look for the specifications, and all this stuff are there. And then the type of decisions and the decision process. So when we're talking about this process, you know that these decisions, the dollar amount is high, the transaction value is high, therefore the risk is high, therefore they are very complex because you have to go through many formalities, many procedures, many protocols are there, right? You have to go for the tenders, sometimes you have to advertise it, right? So you have to communicate with the public, so that's there. So the process is really formalized, it's a formal framework is there. And the buyers and the sellers are more depend on each other. Or තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ බයයි සෙලර් දෙගොල්ලම ඩිපෙන්ඩ් වෙනවා. ඇයි සෙලර්ට සෙලර්ට නැත්තම් ගන්නත් බෑ. يعني ඒ සෙලර්ගේ බිස්නස් එක ලොකුවට පාඩු වෙනවා. සෝරි සෙලර්ගේ බයර්ගේ බිස්නස් එක පොඩු ලොකුවට පාඩු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම සෙලර්ගේ පැත්තෙන් ගත්තොත් එයා විකුණන්නේ ඔක්කොම මෙයාට. මෙයා නැති වුණොත් අර විකුණ ගන්න බෑ. මෙයාට එයාගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එක කරන්න බෑ. මොකද එච්චර ලොකු ප්‍රමාණයක් දෙන කෙනෙක් හොයාගන්න බෑ. හරිද? අරයට එච්චර ලොකු ප්‍රමාණයක් විකුණ ගන්න කෙනෙක් හොයාගන්න බෑ. Am I getting through to you, Rama? So the buyers that they cannot find a person who can supply that much large quantity. And on the other hand, the seller that they cannot find a buyer who buys that large quantity. So the buyers and sellers are more depend on each other because that they cannot have their business without the buyers and sellers. So that is independent. So that is depend. And therefore, right, so they know that they want each other, therefore that they always try to build close long-term relationship with the customers, right? That they go relationship. So those are the characteristics of the business market. So if you can remember, we talk about the consumers buying model, and now we're going to talk about the models for business buying behavior. So when we talk the business buying behavior, Lamai, so as I said you before that there are marketing and other stimuli, so that might be little different from the consumers, that there's no family personal matters, but also the risk factors are there. So these are the factors that impact towards business buying behavior. And also the interpersonal and individual influencers. දැන් අර බයගේ black box එක වෙනුවට මෙතන තියෙන organizational structure එක, organizational එකේ formal culture එක, interpersonal and individual influence, that ඔයාගේ boss කොච්චර technical savvy කෙනෙක්ද, does he like to make new purchases, does he like to make changes, that impact. And then at the point of purchase, that you have to think about whether the අපේ supplier අපිට ඕන quantity එකකින් දෙන්න බැරි නම්, large quantity එකකින් දෙන්න බැරි නම් delivery කරන්න අපි අපේ බයව වෙනස් කරන්න, අපේ supplier වෙනස් කරන්න වෙනවා. ඊළඟට එයාට බැරි නම් අපිට credit basis දෙන්න අපි ආව වෙනස් කරන්න වෙනවා. So sometimes even though you select a particular supplier, you might need to change them based on some of the characters. So this is how the business buyer model moves. And when we talk about the business buying situations, if you can remember last time we talked about the consumer buying situation, so we talk about this complex buying behavior, habitual, if you can remember, right? So here, when we're talking about the business buying situation, so that is more clear, and it's a clear cut because you have three types of buying situations. So that is move from top to bottom where the risk is increasing, right? So straight rebuy, in a sense, just think about buying stationaries for your organization. So when the stock goes out, like the A4s as well as the files and pens and all these stuff, when the stock goes out, that you reorder them. So you don't think about much formalities. It's a kind of a straight rebuy because its risk is very low. The transaction amount is a little low when compared to the others. So the modified rebuy, in a sense, now you're going to buy the stationaries, but you are going to change the supplier because the first supplier says that they do not provide you the transportation, but the second one says, of course, that they can provide the transportation for that cost. So you are changing. It's known as the modified rebuy. So then it's a little bit difficult because you have to then again take the formalities and make the decisions and revise the decision. And then you have a new task buying. Just think about buying something totally new. When you are buying a solar system for your university, right? So when you are buying a flight for the country, so it's a kind of a new task buy. So it's something you have to do carefully because it's very costly. The risk is really high. Right? So that's about the business buying situation. So you have the straight rebuy, you have modified rebuy, and new task buying where the risk is increasing from bottom to top. And then you have the buying centers, right? So the buying centers, in a sense, we sometimes call them as the decision-making unit or the BMUs. So the people who make the decision. Please understand, you have the people who make the decisions in the consumer buying behavior too. Consumer buying behavior එකේ මේ වගේම decisions ගන්න කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවා. But the only difference is it is not that complex. සමහර වෙලාවට family එක ඇතුළේම එකම එක්කෙනාම වෙන්න පුළුවන් ඔක්කොම decisions ගන්න. In here, when we're talking about the businesses, so the buying centers, they are complex and they are professionally trained for that. So the first is the gatekeeper. So the gatekeeper is the one who collect the information, right? So when you're going to buy a laptop for the organization, so he or she collects the information about the laptops, who are the vendors, what are their prices, discounts, and when it comes to your competitors, what are the vendors that they have used, who are their vendors, right? So you compare, you collect the information. So gatekeeper. So most of the time, your secretary, right? And then the gatekeeper is there, and they are the users who will be using this laptop. So that will be the IT staff. People in IT staff will be using these laptops. So who can influence to make the decision? So they are the IT experts. So they say these are the specifications. So this is what you have to buy. So they influence, right? So the decider is the person who make the purchasing decision. So there will be a kind of a purchasing officer. No, not the purchasing officer, but the manager who's spend money, like the finance manager, he is the person who gives the approval for the decision. So he decides whether you need this, what is the cost, and this where you should buy. So he is the person who makes the decision. On the other hand, you have a purchasing officer who made the purchases. He will be buying this product for you. So that's about the buying centers who make the decisions in decision making process of business decision making process. So when we talk the influencing, who can make the influences on business buying? So definitely the environmental factors. When the economic, when there is a crisis, when there is a boom, when there is the taxes, then all these factors impact towards the business buying technology. And then the organizational culture, right? So whatever the organization's objectives, policies, procedures, their structure, their whatever the system, so that also determine when you make the new purchases. And also the interpersonal about your boss, right? So how is the authority goes, and how you can convince them to buy new products, right? Make new decisions. An individual decision. Suppose your CEO is a kind of a person who is very young, educated, and a very tech savvy person. So then it's easy for you to convince them, right? So then the buyers are there. So what are the stages that you have to go through the business buying process? So if you can recall the consumer buying process, you can remember that there were 5 stages where we said like need recognition, information search, alternatives, comparing alternatives, and evaluating alternatives, and making the decision process, and then the post-purchase decision. So those were the 5 decisions. So when we're talking about the business buying process, it is little complex and it is little riskier. Therefore, there are 3 addition steps for the business buying process. So we have altogether 8 steps in business buying process, where we are starting from the problem recognition, general need description, product specification, supply search, proposal solicitation, supply selection, order routine, and the performance review. Problem recognition, in a sense that first you have to understand that there is an issue. So someone from IT staff, he comes and tells, so the speed is very low, so it doesn't work. Some application does not support this laptop. It's very old, so you have to replace it. So that might be a kind of a user who identified the problem, right? So the problem recognition. And then you have to give a kind of a general need description. So there might be a kind of an immediate officer who report to this IT, whom that IT staff member report, and he gives a kind of a general need description. He says, right, this is what we want. We don't want that much of features, but these are the stuff that we want. So he gives the general need description, what they need to be done, right? So then the IT manager is, or IT consultant, a kind of a person is there. So he gives the product specification. He says, this is the speed that we want, this is the resolution, and this is how it should go. And he gives a kind of a product specification. Then the secretary is looking for the suppliers, and he's getting the proposal. She's getting the proposal from each and every suppliers, whatever the discount that they can give, whatever the features, warranty, and all this stuff. And then you ask them to come and put their proposal. Can you select few of the proposals and ask them to come and present? Then soon after they present, so you select particular supplier and you then make the orders. So when the order goes on, then what happens? So you order routines are there. So you review the performance, right? So you check and you repeat and all these stuff. So that's what we call as the stages in the buying business buying process. And when we're talking about the institutional and government market, so when it comes to the B2B market, so this business market might be another institution or the government, right? So you have to understand. So if it's a government, so then complexity is little high, because you have to get the public review, you have to go call for the open bids, and you have to go for the tenders, you have to negotiate the contract, you have to get into the agreement, right? So there is a kind of a specialized buying. So this is why we have some of the expert that is specialized on the G2G and B2G markets, right? So that is something you have to understand. So with that, we have come to the end of the 4th chapter and today's session 2. So this is a kind of a review question. So you try to answer, but you don't need to upload it, right? So with that, we have completed 4 chapters today. So we have given the introduction, and then we talk about the marketing environment and the strategic planning process, and then B2B and B2C market, which are like the few important chapters in marketing. So then next week, we will be covering the other 4 chapters, which is the marketing mix, product, price, place, and promotion. So for the moment, please remember that I have posted the assignment there too. So when you come to the exam, so please come with the assignment, complete assignment. So you should write just for 2 papers, so that would be enough, more than enough. Don't write more than that. 2 A4s is more than enough. And then the continuous assessment, I'll make it available on this. Not this Friday, next Wednesday, right? Not this Wednesday. No. Yeah, this Friday. Yeah. So I'll make available your continuous assessment on this Friday from 8 to 10, right? So I'll make it available from 8 to 10. You have to do it within that time. So it is essentially, it is compulsory in a sense that please participate. It doesn't matter whatever the marks that you get, because we anyway upgrade the mark. But if you do not sit for that, what will happen? So that will definitely reduce your in term final marks. This is why I'm asking you to participate there, because we won't have a chance to do a second attempt. Therefore, please make sure to participate in that. So that's it. With that, we have come to the end of the session. So if you have any question, you can ask. If not, we can wind up the session. So we will be having the same session tomorrow. That will be starting at the same time. So something like similar to this, right? So we will be having the same time schedule. Okay, assuming that you don't have any question, I'm going to wind up the session. Thanks, Linda. Okay, bye.
Recording.